Welcome back to He's a Giant, pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I'm your host Sal with my co-host Monty. How's it going, man?
Doing good, man. Back from vacation. Got a little bit of sun. Still a little tan, a little red. Mix of both, and waiting to see if we're ready to riot for these Hall of Fame news.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, happy belated birthday to Monty, who,
Thank you,
he
thank
had his birthday on Friday. Monty turned 16 for those who don't know.
you.
Uh, you burn like a typical white man. I respect that about you. Looking like a lobster.
So I'll tell you, the first day I was on vacation, I sat like by the pool all day, and I wore a hat like this, and then I was like this all day, and I took off the hat, and it was just
Do you
a
have do you
white.
have the semicircle on your forehead? Yeah,
I
the
mean, not really anymore. On the lot, I wore like a hat, like a straw hat type thing for the rest of the vacation. But the last day, I just like put no sunscreen like my forehead and wore no hat. I'm like, I'm gonna burn the shit out of my forehead because I'm not going home with this line.
All right, we're gonna give people a few minutes to join up. Thank you guys while you're for those who are here. Today we're gonna go over the some of the standouts that really showed out at both the Senior and the Shrine Bowl last week. There were some good prospects. This is the time of year where we finished our reviews of our top fives, and we've been watching some of these guys all year, but it's time to really dig into the tape and the reviews of some of these other guys who have been rising throughout the year, maybe names that you haven't heard of. So it's worth going through some of these guys who did play well in the senior exhibition games. Um, there's some decent names to talk about, and we're definitely going to get into that. We
Definitely.
got to talk a little bit of football that's not related to this too. We're going to talk about the Giants, obviously, and some of the stuff's going on. The Super Bowl obviously is this Sunday with the Eagles and Saquon Barkley going up against Kansas City. This one's easy, all right? This one should be easy for you guys. I don't want to hear it. I don't care who you liked when he was a Giant. You're a Giants fan. You want the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game.
Yep.
That's it. I don't want to hear any excuses. I want to hear the bullshit. You are a New York Giants fan. You do not want to see the Philadelphia Eagles win the game. They may win the game, but you don't want to see that shit. You can live with the Patrick Mahomes dynasty. You don't need to see that. So I'm sorry, I'm not listening to people rooting for this shit from the Eagles. So if you're a Giants fan, you're sitting here, I'm rooting for the Eagles, then go fuck yourself right now. Right now. Because today I want to bring the theme back to what being a Giants fan means. So a Giants fan means. So before we get into this, as we're talking, Monty, the NFL award show is going on. And
Yep.
congratulations to Saquon Barkley, who just won Offensive Player of the Year. He had a great year.
Mhm.
We all kind of figured he would win it. In about an hour, or maybe the next 40 minutes, they're going to announce the Hall of Fame inductees into the 2025 Hall of Fame class. And Eli Manning is up for his first year, and we'll see. We don't know exactly what's going to happen yet, but there have been a lot of reports leaked, which I hate from people who supposedly get information, including one Hall of Fame voter, Ira, fat fuck Ira Kaufman from Tampa, who's out there on Mad Dog show saying that, well, your guy's not getting in, and I didn't vote for him. You should go take a look. For those, I'm taking the gloves off. Go look at what Ira Kaufman looks like. Go look up his page and tell me that man deserves to have a vote in who goes to the NFL Hall of Fame. It's disgusting. Ira Kaufman from Tampa. Who the fuck do you think you are? You can talk about a Hall of Fame this and Hall of Fame that and what makes a Hall of Famer. I'm going to show you what the Hall of Fame looks like. You know what it looks like? It looks like this. You see that? That is a Hall of Fame moment. That is what the Hall of Fame is all about. It's about great players doing great things when it matters. Nobody plays football or any sport so they can have the best EPA, as much as I like analytics. Nobody plays this game so they can have completion percentage. They play to win the game. They play to win titles. When we were kids and we started worshiping these sports heroes, we watched it because they were our local guys or guys we idolized because we wanted to see them win titles. That is what this is about. The Hall of Fame, the legendary status of football, of any sport, is about guys who get it done in the biggest moments, guys who take home the trophy. It's not about your freaking touchdown to interception ratio. It's not about how good or bad your offensive line was. It's none of that shit. It's who walks home with titles. There are not a lot of guys who have won 2 Super Bowls at quarterback in the NFL. And there's only one guy who's done it as an underdog twice and who's done it with the greatest postseason run in the history of the NFL, of any quarterback, with the 32nd ranked offensive line and a defense that wasn't all that great and a run game that wasn't all that great that year. There's one guy who did that. There's only one guy who took on an 18-0 juggernaut that was dubbed the greatest team ever, and took them down in the biggest moment when he got the ball at his own, I think, 16-yard line with, I think, 2:40 to go or whatever it was in the clock, and walked that great defense down and put the ball in the end zone with that sluggo, beautiful lob pass to Burris in the back of the end zone that we all remember, and every one of us remembers that moment when that ball was hanging in the air and you looked and the camera rolled and you saw Burris just sitting there wide open in the end zone. That is what the Hall of Fame is about. It's not about this other bullshit. It's about that. So whatever happened tonight, that's what today's about. And the reason I'm bringing that up, Monty, and I'm sorry if I'm soliloquying like a villain right now,
You're
but
good.
the reason I'm bringing this up because I am so tired of Giants fans at each other's throats for years, myself included, over the direction the team should go in, whether or not Daniel Jones is good or Daniel Jones is not good, whether or not Saquon Barkley should be here or should not be here. I am so sick of it. There was a time when this man, number 10, was our quarterback, where there were no questions. We had our leader, we had our quarterback. All we wanted to do was win. And we won a lot. We won a lot. We won 2 Super Bowls. Not a lot of teams can say that. Not a lot of fans can live to see that with that guy. And I want us to get back to that. Giant fans need to start thinking about, and it's not on us to fix it, but we need to start thinking about this is what matters. Get this team back in order and root for wins. I'm tired of rooting for losses, man. I'm tired of getting pissed off when my team wins a game in December, right? I'm so sick of this shit. Figure this out, Joe Shane. I don't care. I didn't want you back, but you're back. Figure it out. Joe Shane, Brian Dable, John Mara, Tim McDonald, whoever. Figure it out and get us back to where this guy took us. Get us back to that. And we can all root for that shit together. So whatever happens the next 30 minutes in the stupid voting and Ira fucking Kaufman and his band of losers voting, whatever happens with that, we had this twice. We saw that Lombardi go up, and they can't take that shit away from us ever.
Yeah, man. Very well said. And I just want to add on to it is I think a lot of this Eli Manning argument is like disingenuous bullshit from a lot of people who really don't know anything about Eli's career and just spout bullshit that they've seen or, half paying attention to his career, how many interceptions he got. And it's like, oh, yeah, this isn't a top guy. Let me push back on some of the narratives that are out there a little bit. Once something touching, I'm tired of this, the interceptions, fucking just bringing up bullshit. I don't give a fuck how many interceptions you throw if you win football games. Brett Favre threw a lot of interceptions. Peyton Manning threw a lot of interceptions. Kurt Warner threw a lot of interceptions. Josh Allen throws a lot of interceptions. Even this year, but he throws a lot in general. Throwing a lot of interceptions does not make you a bad quarterback as long as you're winning games. It's a style of play. I'll tell you what, Sal, that picture you just showed us about, next thing that happens after he breaks out of the sack, he throws a ball to the middle of the field. You know what you're not supposed to, quote unquote, do as a quarterback is throw a prayer in the middle field. I'll tell you what, if he doesn't have the balls to make that play, we do not win the Super Bowl. And it's because of the type of quarterback he was. To take those shots is what made Eli Manning special, and we won Super Bowls because of it. Another, lame bullshit argument is that Eli Manning got carried to these, that he was like a passenger along these Super Bowl runs. I'll say 07, there was some truth to that. The defense was very good, but he turned it on in the playoffs. He was amazing in the playoffs, but I don't want to go too much into 2007. We can, there's certainly a little bit more merit to that argument, at least. Unlike, Ben Roethlisberger, there was no merit to that he was anything other than a passenger in his first Super Bowl when he had a quarterback rating of 22-1. But regardless, in 2011, Eli Manning had the third most passing yards, postseason included, in NFL history. First in postseason yards in NFL history. He took I have the exact stats here. 25th defense in the NFL, 25th scoring defense, 32nd run offense, and the 31st offensive line according to PFF. There's a few people who do it, but PFF has this 31 that year. I would like somebody else to point out anybody who even had similar ranks in those categories who won a Super Bowl, other than Eli Manning, who had two really good wide receivers, but it was him and his wide receivers and a pass rush who turned it on in the playoffs that won that game. But that was far from a spectacular defense. That was a bad offensive line, and it was a below average run game, and that's being generous on all fronts. And Eli Manning carried that team, led the NFL in game-winning drives and fourth quarter comebacks. Just some absolute bullshit. And the last thing I want to push back on is this narrative. It's like he was never an All-Pro. He never got MVP votes. Do you understand the era that we just witnessed of quarterbacks? You could make a strong argument that during Eli's tenure, he played with 4 of the top 5 quarterbacks in NFL history. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. You could make a very strong argument. All 4 of those guys are in the top 5 of all time. So no shit, he had a hard time getting All-Pro and Hall of Fame votes. Big Ben didn't get it either. Are we arguing that Big Ben isn't a Hall of Famer? As much as I shit on Big Ben is a fantastic quarterback. Big Ben absolutely deserves in the Hall of Fame. Potentially, you can make the argument over Eli. I mean, I love Eli, but you can definitely make the argument his resume is better. But we're going to disqualify it because he doesn't have any All-Pros or fucking Hall of Fame votes. Fucking Marcus Mosher, that fucking PA Cowboy fan. Like, are we being serious right now? And, whatever happens tonight, these Hall of Fame doofuses feel like they have to make Eli, quote unquote, wait because they don't want him to be linked to being a first ballot Hall of Famer, even though it should never be about that. It should be going against, whose turn it is and who is out there. And let's be real, there is no big name for this fucking Hall of Fame class. So Eli Manning should be in your Hall of Fame, and he should be your fucking headliner. Because guess what? You fucks don't have a headliner this year. Who's your headliner? Is it Torrey Holt? Like, Torrey Holt's a great player, but that's your headliner. That's when we're writing the story of the NFL. Torrey Holt is your headliner for your Hall of Fame class. Give me a fucking break. Like, Eli Manning should be your headliner.
Well, we'll see what happens, but obviously the leaks are out. You know who did win the MVP in 2007?
Who?
Tom Brady. 4,800 passing yards, 50 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 18-0. You know what Tom Brady was doing on Sunday night at the end of the game on Super Bowl night? He was running off the field with his coach. You know what Eli Manning was doing? He was lifting the Lombardi. Eat a dick, everybody. That's what we got. And this is nothing against Tom Brady, who's, if not the greatest, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But I don't want to hear about Hall of Fame bullshit when we had those moments from that guy.
Yeah. And, one thing I want to put in perspective too for people is like how rare these Super Bowls are and how lucky we are as Giants fans to have witnessed 2, since 2007 is, and I'm with Sal, like we need to fucking figure this out and get back and get it right. But think about this. If every team just took turns every year, a new team won Super Bowls. To see 2, you'd be waiting 64 years. And that's with when the Chiefs go about to potentially win 3 in a row, not including shit like that. you'd be waiting 64 years. We've seen 2 since 2007. Eli Manning brought those. It is rare to
I'll
see a
take
Super
it.
Bowl.
I'll take
It
it.
is rare.
You know,
Wow.
and remember that, Giant fans, as this has been the worst season. I've been a fan for a long time. This is the worst season as a Giants fan I've ever endured, ever. Like top to bottom, from the draft and the disappointment with them not being able to get a quarterback or not taking one, whatever, through the way the whole offseason went, the way the season began, just the shit show that it was, the disappointment, the losses, the underperformance, the joy of having the number one pick for a week and then pissing it away immediately, and then somehow climbing back up to 3, the embarrassment, the planes flying overhead, everything we have been through, right? Watching Saquon go crazy as soon as he leaves here, watching Xavier McKinney leave here and become the best safety in the NFL. As much as I hated the way the Giants general manager and organization went about handling those moves, not because I wanted to keep Saquon, because I wanted to trade him. I wanted to just dump Saquon and Jones together 2 years ago, to be honest. I was very much in that camp to start the rebuild, but that I digress. But everything we have had to endure, this is the worst season ever. And for it to culminate, their 100th season, for it to culminate with what looks like Eli Manning getting snubbed, in the Hall of Fame, I guess it's fitting. I guess it's fitting in this weird way. And he has to get dragged down with the rest of the shit.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where it's got to stop. This has to be the low point. Maybe the Eagles win in a couple of nights, and that's the low point. I don't know, right? But this weekend, this hemorrhaging has to stop as a fan base. And this organization needs to get this shit together. Enough. We've hit rock bottom and gone 50 levels lower. Enough. Get your act together. I'm tired of people making fun of us. I'm tired of people complaining and saying, oh, well, they Micah Parsons today. Oh, I come at them because they told me they were going to draft me and then they didn't draft me. I'm tired of these other people taking shots. We take shots. That's our team. We can do what we want. I don't want to hear these bozos from other teams. Micah Parsons, I got news for you. You know why they didn't take you? You know why they didn't take you? Because you were ass raping your fucking teammates in the locker room at Penetration State University. That's what you were doing. So they didn't want you because you're a rapist, apparently. That's why they didn't take you. I don't know what the fuck Gettleman told you, but that's why they didn't take you, fucker. And you know what? Let me know when you get a ring or maybe get past the division round of the playoffs. Let me know when that happens, Micah Parsons. I don't want to hear your bullshit. All these people taking shots. Kayvon fighting with freaking Des Bryant, right? People saying, well, Kayvon shouldn't talk shit because Kayvon's not very good. Kayvon's a giant. Who the fuck is Des Bryant? Do you know who Des Bryant is? He's a cowboy who had to watch Eli Manning walk his team down and knock that elite Super Bowl contender out of the playoffs in the division round in 2007. He had to watch Eli Manning celebrate in that dumpy stadium of theirs. He had to watch his quarterback shit the bed and throw a pick to R.W. McQuarters as the game ended and watch the Giants go on and win a Super Bowl. And then he had to watch it again. So fuck Des Bryant and fuck Micah Parsons and fuck all of these people. I don't care anymore. It's fun to take shots at the Giants, right? They've left themselves open. They did this to themselves. They made themselves shitty. They've embarrassed us. But I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and root on assholes from other teams and other places shit on our team. This ends now. John Mara, I don't know if you listen to any of this shit. I don't know if any of your lackeys listen to any of this shit, but somebody tell the old man, enough. Get this team right so we don't ever have to be here again. And when we get back to the top, and we are going to get back to the top because we're the New York Football Giants, we're going to have a Lombardi. And we're going to have it before the Dallas Cowboys and hopefully before the Eagles ever get one again. But we're going to get one again. And when we get there, I promise you, I will not forget what Micah Parsons said. I will not forget what Des Bryant said. I won't forget all the clowns who made fun of the Giants this year. I will not forget any of them. But enough. John Mara, get this shit right.
Well said, man. Fuck. Get this shit right. Fuck. And let's get the worst season of our fucking lives over with. Let's move on. And if it ends with Eli Manning out in the Hall of Fame or fucking Eagles win the Super Bowl, I sure fucking hope not. But let's move on to fucking brighter days.
Absolutely. How far are we into this? Oh my God, we're 20 minutes in. Sorry, I was ranting like crazy. All right. So a couple other Giants tidbits out there. I don't always get along with everything he says on the timeline. We fight a little bit, but your buddy Ethan has been manifesting something, and I got to give him a shout out.
Fucking, it's working.
Ethan, and and I've had my differences with Ethan on the timeline, but it's all in good fun. But Ethan has been manifesting, for those who don't know, from NYG Weekly. Ethan has been manifesting Matt Stafford to the Giants since October, I believe.
Yeah.
And then the Rams they announced they're trading Cooper Kupp. And that beautiful, lovely, wholesome woman who I adore, Kelly Stafford, gets on her pod today. And she manifests, my husband wants to win. He doesn't want to. You're getting rid of Cooper Kupp? I would like a new adventure, essentially saying all that. You got Malik Neighbors putting out not so cryptic tweets with 9 and 10 and a little ram like emoji next to it, and talking about how awesome Matt Stafford's arm talent is in interviews. And you got Jermaine Illuminor just flat out saying, "Hey, Kelly Stafford, bring your husband into you," before he deleted the tweet. I don't know if you saw that, Monty.
No, I missed it, but I heard about it.
So. So maybe Matt Stafford, what do you think, Monty? Matt Stafford to the Giants. Matt Stafford is fucking nice. I'll take Matt Stafford.
I love Stafford, and it would be nice to have some winning here. I'd be a little bit worried about the price. Let me see what the price is. And it would not keep me from drafting a quarterback.
No.
But I don't hate quarterback learning from Matthew Stafford, not one bit.
Did you freeze?
Oh, I'm still here. You see me?
Okay, I'm sorry. You froze for a second. Go ahead.
But yeah, I wouldn't hate a quarterback learn from Matthew Stafford one bit. I wouldn't hate to see this team showing some signs of success for once and seeing what Malik Neighbors could do with a real quarterback.
Yeah, no, I would kill for Matt Stafford to be here, dude. I mean, I don't think he's coming here. I've heard, Jeremiah was talking about this. And there's some other guys who were talking about this, and the team I've heard, like, in case he moves, that I've heard the most rumblings about, the team I've heard is Pittsburgh. And today Pittsburgh announced that it's like, so Jay Glazer, who's pretty well connected to Mike Tomlin, announced that neither Russell Wilson or potentially not even Justin Fields are coming back, which means they don't have a quarterback either. So what are they? I mean, that's a team that's really ready-made to win. Mm-hmm. Every year they're ready-made to win. Their problem has been they haven't had a quarterback since Big Ben basically got old. So I can see Matt Stafford taking a shot at this with Pittsburgh, man. That's probably the one that makes sense. But hey, listen, if we could get Matt Stafford here, like, to me, the dream scenario is you bring in Stafford for a reasonable trade, whether it's a player or whatever, a reasonable trade that doesn't cost too much because he's 37, he's owed a lot of money, get Matt Stafford in here, and then you get to calmly sit back in the draft because you have Matt Stafford, and lo and behold, Shador or Cam Ward are sitting there at 3, and you take one of them. Right? To me, that's the dream scenario, and you let that kid learn for a year or two behind Matt Stafford, and that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be the best. And I mean, but I do think it, that'll be interesting. If it sounds like Russ is out, and if Stafford goes there, maybe maybe Russ is somebody you bring in. He's not quite Matthew Stafford, but it's the same type of idea of the older veteran. Potentially give some time take some pressure off taking a rookie at 3, and what doesn't keep you from taking him and gives him a guy to learn under. So maybe that's another route we can see this team go. But seems like everybody in the Giants wants Stafford right now, so we'll see what happens.
Right. So that's going on. And you got Malik and Illuminor out there, like, actively campaigning to try to get good players here. It's a little strange to watch. To me, it's a little depressing to watch because they're doing it because, like, their GM hasn't done it. But I understand why they're doing it.
It's so strange to see all these, like, players talking about like Saquon saying like, yeah, I think they need a QB in like New York. So you don't normally see this shit because there's normally a quarterback there. Like just
Mhm.
everybody knows is on. It's like when the Falcons talked about like needing to draft a quarterback. Everyone's like, that was kind of weird because you had Desmond Ritter's right there. Like it's kind of rude, but we don't have that. We literally don't have anyone. So it's like people can say it quarterback of the Giants all they want, and they're really not offending anyone.
Right. I mean, it
Rude.
would I mean, Jameis would be a great consolation prize in my mind, especially if we know we're getting one of these two kids because he's just such a great locker room guy, such a great
Mhm.
vibes guy, and he is look, say what you want. He's a former number one pick. The guy knows how to play football.
Yeah.
And I think being a veteran quarterback in the room with a young quarterback, it's not about being this great quarterback. Sometimes it's not those great quarterbacks that are the best teachers. It's just learning about how to prepare, right? How do you go about your week? How do you dive into the film? How do you read defenses and sit through meetings? And what are you trying to pick up? I think as long as you have a good teacher type in there, a lot of good can happen. I mean,
He just
Eli had Kurt Warner, right, who was
mhm.
a great quarterback, and I think it did help him. But there are guys who come in and have, like Tyrod Taylor has been the quarterback for a lot of these younger quarterbacks, right? He was the quarterback who was there when Justin Herbert took over. He was there. I think he was there. Was he there for? No, he wasn't there for Josh Allen. He
He
was there
was there
just
for
for Josh Allen.
Baker.
Baker, yeah. So, there are good veterans who do this and shepherd people. And so Jameis is a good choice. But like, listen, if you can get your hands on a guy like Stafford, you gotta try. Peter put up a comment, it would be 50 million and a 26 first. There's no way that it's gonna cost a 26 first for Matt Stafford.
I don't think so. I mean, like I know like Aaron Rodgers went for first, but that was off of back-to-back MVPs.
No, I think yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about a player and a day three pick or or like a day two pick.
I think realistically I could see it costing a second. I don't love the idea of paying a second, but I could see it being the cost.
I mean, would you give up a 2026 second and a day three pick this year for Matt Stafford? Like a second and a fifth.
I mean, I think that's fair.
A future second.
I just don't think I'd do it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, but that might be
I
on the
don't think
high
that's
end.
an unreasonable thing to say it would cost. I just don't know if I'd do that.
It's like the equivalent of having a third this year, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so that's. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I think again, Matt Stafford wants to win title again. I don't think he's going to view the Giants as the spot for that. But it's a fun idea. But listen, I'd love to have him. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Russell Wilson's out there now, but what we'll see. Matt, Professor was asking why would they move on from Stafford? I don't know why would they move on from Stafford. I'm just
It
going by his beautiful
seems like Kelly's perplexed about it too.
his beautiful, wholesome, lovely wife's, her podcast,
I mean,
and I
she literally said she's like we were like a play away from the conference championship. I don't know why you're trading away Cooper Cup.
bring Matt and Kelly Stafford in New York. They deserve New York. Let's do it. All right. Um, is there anything else Giants related that we're going through? I think we're gonna find out at any minute now, right? What's going on with the Hall of Fame stuff?
Yeah, if anybody hears about it and we miss it, go ahead and throw it in the
It's,
chat. We'll talk about it a little
it's,
bit, but
it's 10:04, so it should have happened. Has it happened
mm,
officially yet?
we'll see. I haven't seen it. If you say if it's official, somebody drop it. But should we dive into the Senior Bowl talk a little bit?
Sure. Let's do it. All right. So the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl just happened, and a lot of these guys are guys you've heard of. Some are guys you haven't heard of, and it's always worth going into this. So before we begin this part, I'm I'm not as big a senior and Shrine Bowl guy as some other people. Like I watch it because it's important information,
Mm-hmm.
it's data, but I feel like sometimes people put too much emphasis on Senior Bowl performances. I often kind of, you know, dismissively say things like the Senior Bowl is for people who don't watch college football, and who draw
Mm-hmm.
conclusions from the Senior Bowl. And to some extent, I do think that's true. I think there are people who look at Senior Bowl performances and make dramatic declarations about players that really kind of negate what they've put on tape for years and what you've seen from them if you've been watching them, or they overemphasize good performances sometimes. It's gotta, to me, it's more of confirmation, right? Just much like the combine, where you're looking at certain athletic trait results and testing results to verify what you think you saw or supplement what you saw on tape. The Senior Bowl should be viewed the same way. I do think
Mhm.
it's really useful for some of those smaller school guys, right? Like the
Definitely.
FCS guys or the Division 2, like Division 3 guys, or small school guys who don't get a chance to play against the big dogs, to play against them and see how they do one-on-one. Um, and I think there's value in that, but it's not to be disregarded. Like it's clear that NFL teams value this information, how they do on one-on-one drills. So I think it's worth going over this. So we've compiled a list of players, um, and Matt in the chat is putting up the guys in the Hall of Fame. So far, Jared Allen and Sterling Sharp. Sterling Sharp, wow, when did he
Long
retire?
time waiting.
For those who don't know, that Sterling Sharp played with Brett Favre. That's Shannon Sharp's older brother. Great receiver in his time. Um, yeah, and then he got hurt. His career got derailed by injuries. Um, but we compiled the list of your guys, and I think we'll go through the Senior Bowl guys first, right?
Yeah, let's do the Senior Bowl and then we'll do.
Yeah, and the Senior Bowl, like the way to look at it, it tends to have like the day 2 guys, right? The day 2, there will be some first rounders in there, but mostly day 2 type guys. And then the Shrine Bowl will have mostly day 3 guys and some
Mhm.
day 2 guys. So that's generally how it shakes out. Eric Allen made the Hall of Fame. Thank you, Matt, for keeping us updated. Um, all right. So it looks like there's some older players that are going in right now. I
All,
don't know if, yeah,
all names that, I mean, with all respect to him, I think Eli should be an over, but we'll see.
yeah. I mean, Eric Allen retired a long time ago, like a long time ago. I know. So
Antonio
Antonio
Gates.
Gates,
Antonio Gates, the guy who should be an over Eli. There's one.
yeah. Well, this is not his first time either, right?
I think last year was his first time.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Like Antonio Gates
Mhm.
should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Some of
Mhm.
this stuff I just don't get. Um, anyway, all right. So Senior Bowl. Let's go through some of the quarterbacks that played and let's see how they did. So there were 3 quarterbacks that we highlighted here, Monty, and I don't know if you want to go through them, but I think it's worth talking about all of them because these are guys who I view as day 2 to 3 type swing quarterback options, and some of them are pretty good.
Yeah. Just real quickly, we'll go in. It looks at the chat saying, that's it. That's the class, apparently. So that's only 4 they showed. Eli Manning will not be a Hall of Famer this year.
Okay.
We had our speech a little bit earlier. Guys can go back and listen if you weren't here, but it's fucking bullshit. Adds on to a worst season in Giants history. It's a complete snub. Ridiculous, but
Yeah,
so we
I was
are.
gonna take my jersey off if he made it, but I'm not taking this jersey off. So we're gonna do the show with this thing on, because Eli is the GOAT. All right, let's go through the quarterbacks.
Yeah. So, the first guy I'll bring up, I think this is a guy that did really well. It's a name that, it's in Dane Brugler pointed out as a guy who had a really good week, and it's Tyler Shough from Louisville.
Shock,
Shuck,
shock, yeah,
Shuck. That's how you pronounce it.
shock,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Um, he was a really consistent guy. I mean, he's a guy, dude, he has some NFL traits. He has a big arm, and he went out there and he played well, but he moved a little bit. But I think the main thing that he really benefited from showing off is, we'll get into the other guys, but it was not a great year for the Senior Bowl QBs. Nobody really impressed. Tyler Shough. He did okay. He was consistent, and that's really more than you can say for the other guys in this group. I don't have too much to say of him, but I think he's put himself into the conversation with that next group after the Shadors and the Cam Wards of the world.
So I actually went back and watched some Tyler Shough tape. Last night I was watching it. I was having a great discussion with our buddies, Authentic and One T. Tyler Shough had a hell of a game against Notre Dame with Loyola this year. So a little background on him. He's an older prospect. Tyler Shough is 25 years old. He's Van Wilder. He's been in college for 7 years. He started in 2018 at I think at Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. And he moved around a little bit. He spent a few years at Oregon, then 3 years at Texas Tech, and then this year at Louisville. So this is his 7th year and his 6th year of playing. But all that aside, 6'3", I think he's about 220, 225. Big guy. He's listed different like anywhere from 6'3" to 6'5". So let's say he's around 6'3", 6'4". When you watch him, he looks like a guy who's been around for a long time. He's well coached, sound footwork, sound repeatable mechanics, good throwing motion. Watch him, Monty. If you haven't watched him, this guy has a really nice deep ball. Like, he puts the ball really just perfectly on a lot of these deep ball passes. Nice touch. He has good velocity over the middle. He's got some juice to him. He can move around. He's mobile. Now he shows a lot of nice stuff on tape when you watch him. Like, you're pretty impressed. Something I did notice, and I don't know if this is a scheme or system thing. I definitely haven't studied Louisville football to the degree where I would know this, but a lot of one read stuff, like locks in that first read, makes a big time throw kind of guy. I don't know if that's a limitation of the quarterback or the system, but what I saw in Tyler Shough was enough to say, this is a guy. There's a little bit of like a Tanner McKee type in this guy. Like, there's an NFL player in there. I think you bring him in, he can be a solid backup for somebody and probably could spot start places and find ways to win. I don't think that he's like a total throwaway, and I wouldn't be surprised if he climbed the charts up. And some people think of him as QB3 in this class.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've heard coming out of it. I mean, it's a good thing because partially it's that nobody rose, but he did seem to impress people, and you've heard the talks that he might be able to put himself into that QB3 conversation. So, it'll be interesting if he can get there. And just looking at it here, it looks like he has some pretty like somewhat impressive numbers on PFF. I mean, he had 87.7 passing grade, 92.1 intermediate, 91.8 deep, 91.6 no pressure grade. He had a pressure to sack rate of only 9.3%.
The advanced metrics like him. Like, the data likes him. Is solid against pressure, very good against no pressure. Throws the ball well all over the field. I know you haven't had a chance to dig into his throwing depth chart, but it's actually, I looked at it. It's pretty good. But some of those metrics we're talking about, right? The impressive things here: 75.1% adjusted completion percentage, which is really solid. It's not Shedeur Sanders level, but it's really good. 5 to 1 ratio, essentially 5.1 to 1.8 ratio of big time throw rate to turnover worthy play rate. That's really good. And then you're talking about a 9% pressure to sack rate. That's like approaching Michael Penix territory. A guy who doesn't take a lot of sacks despite pressure. And when you watch him, you can see why. Like, he moves around. He has pretty good feel for the pocket, and he gets the ball out fast. Like, even though his time to throw on average is 2.92, that's because they use his legs a little bit. But on truly designed pass plays, or when he's scrambling to throw, he gets the ball out quickly before the pressure can get to him. So, again, there's some advanced metrics that support what I saw on tape, which is like a pretty damn good quarterback. Again, I don't know if it translates at a high degree to the NFL level, because there is a lot of one read stuff that I saw, and I saw him lock in a lot and just make great throws, and those great throws can be picks in the NFL if you're locking in on a receiver. But again, I'm talking about a day 2, day 3 type guy, so definitely worth looking at. He certainly has an NFL size that's desirable, 6'3" to 6'5", depending on which measurement you look at, and 225. That's solid.
Yeah.
So he's the first one. How about the next guy?
Yeah, I mean, the other guy that had a pretty okay week was Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart was a name that everybody was looking for going in. Jaxson Dart and Jalen Milroe. Those were the two big names going into this. And, this was the opportunity for one of them to really solidify themselves as quarterback 3. And neither of them really did. But Jaxson Dart didn't have a bad week. He showed that he went out there and showed he had, the arm strength. He made a big pass in the Senior Bowl game, on that flea flicker. Not exactly where you want the ball to be, but he got it there, and Beck went up and made a play. We'll talk about that. Had that 2-point conversion, ran a ball in for a touchdown. and overall throughout the week was, pretty decent. He was, had some inconsistencies out there. But you don't overreact to the Senior Bowl one way or the other. I don't think anything out there, not that it really would have either way changed too much about my opinion on Jaxson Dart, but yeah, I mean, I would say it was pretty much middle line for him, flat line throughout this, which you got more people got eyes on you, and it didn't look terrible. It's ultimately a win for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jaxson Dart had his ups and downs. I mean, he didn't do great in the game, and there were varying reports I heard. Um, it depends on who you listen to. I think Jeremiah, when he spoke about it, he kind of said, I don't think that the NFL scouts felt super strong about his performance there. But at the same time, I don't think anybody left like super concerned either. Like, I think they
Yeah.
kind of felt like they know what he is, and there's a lot to like, and there's some things you don't like. And it's a flavor thing. Our resident Jaxson Dart, agent here, Alex.
Yeah, Alex loves
Shout out
Dart.
to Alex. Alex is gonna, if Jaxson Dart ever ends up a Giant, we're gonna all praise Alex, especially if he ends up great. I hope Alex is right, because he's like pushing the Jaxson Dart agenda with real passion. I respect it. I
Sure.
think look, we went over Jaxson Dart. He was our QB4. Dart is a good player.
Mhm.
There's systems where he'll be a good football player. I don't think you can dismiss that, right? I like forget
Yeah.
like he's one of those guys that's caught in the crosshairs of like some people want to make him sound great and some people want to say he's trash, and none of those things are true.
Yes.
He's a he's
Correct.
a he's a good football player. I think and he has the tools you need to be a good NFL player. I think with a little bit of coaching, development, and the right scheme, we're not talking about like a top of the first round type player, but a little bit of support system. I can see Jaxson Dart being a very good NFL quarterback, a good starting NFL quarterback. That wouldn't shock me at all, you
No.
know?
And
So,
I'll say, he's a notch below him, but that idea kind of reminds me of Bo Nix last year, of kind of what you said. There's people who were like propping Bo Nix up to be like everything and more. Didn't matter where he went, like had everything. He had his limitations, and there's people who just completely shit on Bo Nix, non-NFL quarterback. The reality, and especially after his Senior Bowl. After his Senior Bowl, people, Joe Bo Nix had a bad Senior Bowl. People are like, this guy stinks, bad quarterback. And we are kind of just like, no, it's the same guy always was. There were some issues, and same thing out with Dart and all these guys is, when you're not playing with these constantly, he's a timing quarterback, and it's hard to, get that timing with just 1 week of practice with these guys. I think it's similar here. I don't necessarily think he'll go as high as a guy like Bo Nix went, but I do think he's a guy who's a little bit scheme dependent. He's a little bit more scheme versatile than Bo Nix was, but he didn't have as high of a ceiling within a single system as Nix had. But similar levels of prospects, I would say.
yeah. I think Dart is a guy that he can go anywhere from sneaking into the first round somewhere to sliding, I would say, to like the back half of day two. I
Yeah.
I I, I don't think Dart. I'd be shocked if he slid to day three. I really would.
No, I think
He's
there's a reality he can go round 3, because that's just kind of how it goes in the NFL. Like,
right.
if you fall out of the first round, there's a lot of times quarterbacks don't go round 2. It's like if they wanted to, they would have taken you in the first round, and if they don't feel that highly about you, they're not going to take you round 2. It's not always the case, but you see that a lot. You saw that in 2022, for example. You saw all those quarterbacks go round 3, and I think there's a reality it could happen with Jaxson Dart. But I don't think it's a reality he's going to have like a Spencer Rattler like fall. He's going to end up in the 5th round.
I would be, and if that happens, that's a shame. I mean, that would be a travesty the NFL, because then you're just dismissing good football. Like he's too good for that. Anyway, so Dart, I don't think much change with Dart's profile is going to come down if somebody really loves him and wants to take him, or if not, they'll take a swing on him on day 2. Um, Alex is insisting he's going round 1. I hope you're right, Alex. I hope you're right. I hope you're right for his sake.
Bet that under when it comes out. It'll probably be about, I mean, it'll probably at the very least be 31.5 no matter how good this hype gets.
Yeah. All right. The third quarterback we're discussing from the Senior Bowl is Dillion Gabriel. And there's a fourth one we have to discuss a little bit, but it won't be in a good way. Dylan Gabriel did a good job. The quarterback from Oregon,
Mhm.
Tiny Tua, as we like to
Yeah.
call him.
Mhm.
Left-handed Tua, left-handed Polynesian quarterback from Oregon, who really has had a solid year.
Mhm.
Look again, a lot like the other guys, really solid performance in all circumstances. Throws the ball well all over the field, very accurate, 81.9% adjusted completion percentage rate. Like that was actually tops. I think he was tied with Shedeur Sanders, if I'm not mistaken, for that. Like he's really good, very accurate thrower. Um, doesn't throw the ball very deep. He's kind of a short intermediate guy, but good in the quick game, gets the ball out fast, doesn't take a ton of sacks. He had a 13% pressure to sack rate. Doesn't turn the ball over a lot, 1.6%. Also doesn't make a lot of big time throws. He's only at 3.2%, but that's his game.
Mhm.
He's a quick hitter type player. He gets the ball out quick, reads the field. He's a good processor. Ball comes out quick with a little bit of zip underneath, and that's just how he lives. The problem with him is going to be his size. He's smaller than Tua. I think Tua is about what, 6 feet tall, 6'1", something like that. Um,
Yeah, 6'1", I think, 6 foot, something like that.
right. And
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 he's
he's I think he's about 5'10", you
yeah,
know?
I think that's what he's listed at. He's 5'11", but I think he's about 5'10", around
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So like I think people are gonna have issues with his height, the type of game he plays, but it's a good player. Like put him on your team. Again, a decent backup quarterback. I think there's a role. I mean, he should probably go in. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but the way he plays is very similar to how Miami asks Tua to play.
Mhm.
It's not the lefty Samoan thing. I promise you. It's just play style. It's just like quick. I mean, last year I wanted Miami to actually think about drafting. If you remember, Bo Nix.
Yeah, me too.
I
Mhm.
was like, hey, listen, if they took Bo Nix and didn't pay Tua, that would kind
Yeah.
of make sense because Bo Nix plays that same style of football and plays
Mhm.
it really well. And Bo Nix did a good job playing that same style of football this year, right? So, I think this guy could be decent, not at the Bo Nix level, but I think he could be decent in a backup role there.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking, like I said, he's not a Bo Nix level prospect, but you know, I think if you're looking for the guy who could be the next Brock Purdy, I
Yeah.
think this is the type of guy you're looking at. Look, you're not going to replicate Brock Purdy often. That might never happen again. Well, not never. It doesn't happen often. But if you're looking for the next Brock Purdy, this is the type of guy with how much experience he has, playing the most experience ever, and a guy who is very good from here to here, from shoulders up. He processes the ball, process really well. And I'll say, one thing, it did stand out to me from the Senior Bowl. There are a lot of misconceptions. People would kind of like made shit up with this, but he did have the highest velocity, like initial velocity or whatever, football of all the
Mhm.
quarterbacks at Senior Bowl. People said that he had like 10 mile per hour more than the record. That wasn't true. That was made up. Actually, shout out Research Rick and Doug Analytics. They were kind of in my replies when I was like, the radar gun's got to be off or something. Basically, they do this every year. It's different with the NFL Combine, where you see those numbers like Milton and Josh Allen have the record. It's not that. They have this initial velocity they do every single year. I think Joe Milton was like 2 miles per hour better last year, and he was the best. But he was the best out of this group, which is pretty impressive for a guy who I do not have considered have like really good arm strength. I still don't think he has like long like throw power, but he's got the zip, comes out quick, comes out with some velocity. So it's a good thing.
Yep. I mean, I think he's a decent player. I think he's a good football player. I think size will be an issue for a lot of teams, and he has to go to the right place. But I agree. Um, we're not mentioning too much about Jalen Miller here, but we should quickly. He was pretty terrible at the Senior Bowl. There were some troubling things that came out of his measurements,
Little
hand
baby hands.
size. Yeah, he's got little Burger King like hands,
Yeah, a
like
little
like the
Barryn commercial.
like little.
I'm not gonna
uh,
hold this. And
I think
he
he
fumbled
was.
a lot too, which is concerned with that.
Yeah, so he had 11 fumbles this year, and he had just barely over 8-inch hands, like 8 and 5/8 or something like that,
He
right
fumbled
around
in
the same.
Texas too.
Yeah, he was fumbling in practice. He fumbled in the games, and this is a guy whose game is predicated a lot on running the football. So he's going to take hits, and he's going to get that ball swatted at. It's an issue, that it's an issue that people are going to point to and say it's not just a hand size thing. Like you have an issue holding the football. I don't know if that's why he fumbles, but he does fumble. Plus, he has small hands.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to raise some eyebrows. And I think his stock actually dropped. I really thought he would likely be a first rounder just based on traits. But I think his stock took a hit at the Senior Bowl,
Yeah.
big time. So I don't know where he's going now, but he struggled. He had a couple of good days of practice too. People remember the bounce pass and the shitty stuff in the beginning. He put it together. Remember, his tape is littered with up and down film, right? He has great tape and he has awful tape. What he is at the end of the day is a very, very high floor athlete, an elite athlete as a runner, who's a dual threat quarterback who has a cannon of an arm and flashes the ability to be a good passer. Just too much inconsistency. Um, what do you think about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it where it's like we kind of expect this guy to potentially fight his way in the first round just because obviously he wasn't that going in the season. He was like probably like an early second round guy going into it. But we figured this offseason would be good for him. Like, I mean, the Senior Bowl was a little bit, I guess, of a concern. Maybe we overlooked a little bit. But you knew once he got out to the combine and his pro day, he was going to rip the football. He was going to run ridiculously well. He was going to jump ridiculously well. That type of stuff would keep raising him. But now he's fighting an uphill battle because that took a hit, and now he's probably going to be fighting on the cusp to be in the top 50. Probably like outside looking in at this point. And I think the combine and his pro day and stuff will help that. And I think at the end of the day, he will find himself inside the top 50, but I have a hard time seeing him fight back into the first round.
Yeah. No, I think it's an uphill battle. I mean, he's going to blow up the combine most likely, but that's sort of his last shot to climb back a little bit. If he throws really well, I mean, this is one. It sounds stupid, right? But this stuff does kind of matter. If he throws well at the combine, if he looks accurate and he's got touch on deep passes and he's hitting his receivers and he's impressive in person and he tests off the charts, that's definitely going to help his draft stock. It's going to help, alleviate some of the fears people have. Obviously, a lot of it with quarterbacks is interviewing and showing that you
Mm-hmm.
know what you're doing out there. So that stuff we just don't know about. Um, but needless to say, he didn't do much for himself at the Senior Bowl, unfortunately, and he's got a long way to go. And he is absolutely a project. Um,
Here's a realistic thing. What if he goes out there and runs a 4.2? That
It's
could change
listen.
things.
I mean, this is why I for the longest time thought that this guy would be a first round player because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of teams are going to look at him and say, I don't know what this guy is as a passer, but I know I can win football games with him on my team. And
Mm-hmm.
that has value, a lot of value. Like at minimum, the guy's floor is an elite running quarterback. And you may not I don't love it. I'm a pocket passer guy, but it's hard to deny that you can win football games in a lot of systems designing game plans with guys who can actually run the ball like that and move the sticks, right? You can move the sticks, move the sticks, move the sticks. Yeah, you're not going to have a high ceiling unless you can pass the ball well. No way. But you can't deny that some guys are going to be intrigued by it. So you just don't know where he's going to land. I just think that there's so many other things that have to be dealt with Jalen Miller at this point that it's hard to see that alone taking him to a high draft picks. But you're right. He might blow up the combine at a ridiculous level.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else you want to talk about with these
No,
quarterbacks?
no,
Yeah.
we got to get to some of these other positions.
All right, so let's move on. The next position we can talk about here is the running back position. There's a couple guys we can talk about, but the main guy I have listed here is because I think this guy did about the best in practices and things like that is Devin Neal out of Kansas. This guy I'm a fan of. I've been watching for a long time. Very, very shifty player, but he didn't catch the ball a lot in college, but yeah, he's a prototype of the receiving back you'd want, and he did catch the ball well this week. He was, it's hard for some of these running backs in the non-contact, situations to really set themselves apart. But I think Devin Neal did. Devin Neal looked good this week. I really like him as a player. He's compact, shifty, good football player. A lot of experience. Oh, what you have anything to add on to Devin Neal?
He had a good week, and I think the thing about Devin Neal is, like he had a very productive year this year, really
Mm-hmm.
productive actually at college. But he's a little undersized for compared to some of the other guys who you're going to see in this class. 5'11", 215 doesn't sound undersized, but there are some monsters in this class, and I think his frame is built in such a way where he's definitely not like an. I don't think people will view him as an every down back. Like I don't think they're going to look at him as a three down back who's going to pound the rock for the
No.
dirty yards. He's a screen game. He's a receiving option and dump off screen game. He's a change of pace guy. He's a speed guy. He has a lot of desirable traits in a running back by committee. Um, I think he did well to acquit himself as as a person who can handle that kind of role, you know, and be very productive. But I think he will be viewed ultimately as a change of pace back in the NFL. You pair him, not that he is that guy, but using him almost like the way the Lions used Jameer Gibbs along with Montgomery. If you have that
Mhm.
power back, a guy like Neal could be really good. A more recent, comp would be something like your guy, Bucky Irving. Who,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there's a little bit of that. I don't think he's as good as Bucky Irving. You love Bucky
No.
Irving, and obviously Bucky
RB1.
proved himself. Yeah, RB1. But I think there's a little bit of that, right? A guy who shows his strength in the pass game in college as a running back, but maybe has a little bit more juice in the run game too. Just you just don't see it yet, So I'm curious to see where he goes. But he is one of the more intriguing, like explosive backs in this class. So I think he's gonna go on. I think he's gonna sneak his way into day two.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think so too. As a guy who's had a lot of production in college, I mean, he's a senior, he's played 4 years. Last 3 years, he's had over 1,000 yards each year. He's hovered around 6 yards per carry, which is pretty damn impressive. Very productive, very good football player. I agree with you. If we don't, do you have anything else you want to say about Devin Neal?
Nope.
The only other guys I want to kind of call out, we don't have to say too much about him. Travis Etienne's brother, RJ Harvey from UCF. Those guys both did really well. He's practiced. Devin Neal is kind of the guy, but they caught the ball well, which is good for those kind of like shiftier guys. And for like a bigger guy, Damian Martinez, he did really well in like pass protection and things like that. So, a few guys to also keep an eye on. I don't know if you have anything you want to add on to those guys.
The guy I love from that group is RJ Harvey. I mean,
I
I've
love RJ
watched him
Harvey
all year.
too.
I mean, he is that guy is, we heard our old friend Dave Gettleman talk about a touchdown waiting to happen in running back, RJ Harvey is that kind of player, like he's really exciting. I love his game.
And worth calling out, he had the best grade of all the running backs within in the actual like PFF graded out the Senior Bowl game. 79.5 PFF grade from him. He had 24 yards and 6 yards per carry. So in his little time he showed, he also had an explosive run for 15 plus yards. So
And he
good
was second
game
in
for
the
him.
and he was second in the country in that this year. He had
Mm-hmm.
32 runs of 15 plus yards. So second, I'm guessing RB1 was number one. But he was up there. So RJ Harvey's a little bit of a, I'm not gonna say he's unknown, but I think he's a little overlooked here. And he's a guy that I think the team should be taking a look at. I wouldn't mind the Giants getting their hands on a guy like that. He's a playmaker. We need explosive playmakers to some extent. To mix up, and he's a guy that I would look at.
And RJ Harvey, one of the best quarterbacks in the game. 1-for-1 touchdown pass by RJ Harvey. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, Alex is mentioning Damian Martinez. I do like Damian Martinez. He's a bulldozer. And
Yep.
he was really great in pass protection
Which
at the
is
Senior Bowl
important.
too. It's like that keeps you on the field, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
I wouldn't mind him. And I don't think he's gonna go early. I think Damian
No,
Martinez is
big
gonna be one
player.
of those like mid day three, fifth round type guy, right? So you might be able to get two of these guys this year. All right, let's go on to the wide receivers from the Senior Bowl. And this is an exciting group, man. Like the Senior Bowl had some dudes this year in the wide receiver room.
Wide
So
receiver is always fun at the Senior Bowl, especially
yeah,
watching them go through those 1-on-1s and stuff like that.
Yeah. So why don't we start with why don't you get us loaded with Joel? Well, why don't
Yeah,
you
go
do the
ahead.
first guy? I'll do okay. So Jalen Noel, he really stood out. He's the kid from Iowa State. They're two big receivers from Iowa State. Jalen Noel is the slot receiver from there. His teammate was the one who got the majority of the love from the Senior Bowl. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have him on our list here, but Higgins,
Mm-hmm.
the big X receiver from there, is somebody that I would consider for the Giants on day two because we need one of those guys. With Jalen Noel, the slot receiver, very productive, like highly productive. Great route runner, was routing people up pretty nicely at the Senior Bowl. Now it's a little unfair in the Senior Bowl because there's not a lot of help. It's all one-on-one stuff. So some of these quick, shifty slot receivers do tend to look better than they would. But he was productive all year, and he did a very good job. He was blocking his ass off too. Again, that's something that again you like to see. Keeps these guys on the field. So he's the guy to look at. Now, are we looking to draft a slot receiver? Me personally, no, but good player, and I think worth paying attention to as a guy who's going to be loved by a lot of teams. So a little bit of Ricky Pearsall in that guy, a route runner who can
Mm-hmm.
do it all, but mainly a slot receiver.
Yeah, no, he definitely was. It was kind of a big name. I think he won like whatever teams he was wide receiver of the week. But he's some really good guys. I think we'd be a guy we'll kind of have to talk about here after that is Jack Beck, um,
Yep.
TCU wide receiver, actually former teammate of Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. He came in with both those guys their freshman year at LSU. He ended up transferring over to TCU, and his brother, I believe, was Tiger. He was tragically killed in that
In the terrorist attack, yeah.
New Orleans on Bourbon Street, and very cool story. He came out there and he won Senior Bowl MVP at first time a non quarterback has won Senior Bowl MVP that I can remember. And really impressive game by him. He was good all week. He's just a good football player, man. He's a guy. He's one of those guys that looks like he's going to come into the NFL and just be a consistent, reliable football player. He turned it on for that game. He dedicated to his brother or his brother's number during the game. He came out of that with 7 targets for 6 receptions, 68 yards, and a touchdown. So, really cool story. And a guy that, I had my eye on going into this week. He's not just a Senior Bowl story. He's a really good football player. Do you have anything? Do you have his stats and
I
Jack back up?
Yeah, I do, and I wanted to share them because I think we didn't get into him because he didn't make our top five, but man, dude, like have you been watching his film? Like he's
I watched it a
impressive.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, he is impressive. So just a little bit. He's from Louisiana. Played like you said with Neighbors and Trey Harris. I'm sorry, not Trey Harris. With Neighbors
Brian Thomas.
and Brian Thomas Jr. And I was on the same team as Keishon Butte. Very
Yep.
productive out of all those guys. Played tight end. He played tight end, and then he was switched to wide receiver. He's a big kid. He's a big, strong kid. He looks like a tight end. He's like a small tight end, 6'2", 215, but he looks a lot bigger on the field than 6'2", 215. But look at his production, man. 2.44 yards per route run. That's solid. I mean, that's not
Very
elite or anything. It's solid. Contested catch rate, 65%. That's elite. Okay. And his grade versus man, 71.8. He's productive, 62 catches and 91 receptions. So that's in college in 12 games. Tons of targets, tons of catches, 1,034 yards, 9 touchdowns with an average depth of target of 13 yards. 5.5 yards after the catch, which is not a lot, but I mean, just he's kind of a possession receiver. Not a big deep catch guy. A lot of stuff over the middle and the intermediate area, but just really good at contested catches everything that comes his way. Good route runner. Again, kind of like a tight end playing wide receiver, a hybrid, so to speak. The comp you're going to hear from him over and over again is Puka Nakua, right? He's not a
Mm-hmm.
burner, but he's a guy that is big enough to win contested catches. He's strong enough to body any cornerback that covers him and fight them off, runs really good routes, and is just reliable and productive. Like this is an easy, like slam dunk of a reliable wide receiver in the NFL. So you're going to hear the Puka comps a lot. Now, I will say Puka had elite production. If you look at Puka's metrics of the year he came
Yeah.
out, he had like over 3 something yards per route run. Every one of his metrics was screaming, this is going to be a really good player. And people just kind of ignored it because of his 40 time. And of
Hmm.
course, Les Snead and Sean McVay, they had him targeted and they knew they could
Yeah.
get him late because of that. And of course, they win. But Jack Beck is a guy that's not going to catch anybody by surprise. I'd be surprised if Jack Beck got out of the second round at this pace.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. He's it's one of those guys who's a high floor player type of guys I like out of my receivers. And then the last guy I want to talk about here is, if we didn't do any Senior Bowl previews, but if you asked me like who's gonna be the guy that everybody's like being wowed by, who's like built for this type of event, it's Tez Johnson, and he did just that. He was, he had his Tank Dell type practice reps where he just shifty route runner who can just create space. And he did that all week. Very, very good at that type of stuff. He's undersized. There's still gonna be a lot of questions about him, but he's a really, really good football player. He's a slot guy who can kind of create separation as well. He's basically Bo Nix's brother. So I feel like the idea of him going to Denver feels like it's just gonna happen. But
Yeah.
guy, I have some 2.6 yards per route run this year, really good. It's it's only a 33.3% contested catch rate. So not a guy who's going to get that type of stuff, but he doesn't need to with
And
how well he separates.
and Denver doesn't have like their slot receiver position solidified yet. They got Mims and Cortland Sutton out there playing on the outside. They obviously have a really well-designed short passing game using those guys, but a separating slot receiver could really do a lot of damage over there. Now, the comps, Tez Johnson's the guy you and I have watched for a couple of years. Like he always stood
Mm-hmm.
out. We watched that Oregon tape from last year. We were watching your guy Troy Franklin, we're watching Bo Nix. We're like, shit,
Mm-hmm.
this Tez Johnson kid is cooking everybody, right? He was really productive, and then he learned that the story of him being not quite adopted, but sort of adopted by the Nix family, and being calling Bo his brother, and they're close. The Tez Johnson, you're going to hear the comps to a guy like Tank Dell, an undersized guy, doesn't weigh a lot, but he just separates, man. He just runs away from guys. Like they're small, and you worry about them not surviving in the NFL and getting hurt a lot, and you're seeing that to some extent, from Tank Dell. Although obviously, I don't know if that's because of his slot play. I mean, he got hurt running a different kind of route, but a productive player. You put him on a team with a quarterback who can use the quick game and get the ball to him in stride, and he can be deadly. And I mean, that's Bo Nix, right? That's Denver. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
good fit, and they need him. So I would be kind of surprised if he doesn't end up in Denver unless somebody else scoops him up first.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we got a
Yeah, I
little
agree.
upset here. Looks like Josh Allen won the MVP
Yeah,
over Lamar Jackson.
that's what's where people things have been going. Yeah, it's funny. It's because last year I was banging the table that I thought Josh Allen should have been the MVP, and it's funny. I felt the opposite this year. I thought I thought Lamar should have been the MVP, and they kind of won it. They kind of upset. I guess they were both ended up being the favorites in the end, but they kind of screwed them over, but for the same reason both years. Lamar won it last year despite some more stats because of the team success and playing with like not the strongest receivers. And this year, Josh Allen won it, for more the team success and not the greatest supporting cast, but worse stats. Kind of flip flopped. But I
Yeah.
think this should have been Lamar. But
Yep. All right. You want to head over to the tight end room?
yeah, I don't have much to talk about
I
here.
mean, listen, there are a lot of wide receivers we could talk about. We'll get into it. I think we'll have to do more episodes on wide receivers. We see Alex fitting in Pat Bryant, our buddy Nick Filato. He DM'd me a while ago about like Pat Bryant, asked if I had watched him. I only started watching Pat Bryant in a little bit more in depth recently. I do like his game. He's a big receiver out of Illinois. Um, there's a lot to like. There's some things not to like, but I think I do agree that he's a guy that the Giants could target on, potentially on day 3. I don't see him as a day 2 receiver, but who knows? Um, but
Yeah,
there are guys like Jalen Royals. I mean, we're not getting into him, right?
mhm.
And I think that's a guy worth mentioning. Jalen Royals he's really outstanding. Like in my mind, of all the guys we mentioned, Jalen Royals is the most impressive. He's the kid out of Utah State.
Yeah.
Um, my friend Authentic said he reminded him a lot of kind of like the way Jamar Chase plays football. When you watch him, you understand what he's saying. Like, he's about the same size. He's a really smooth route runner. He's strong at the catch point. He separates. He gets yak. Like he does everything well. He doesn't. He's not obviously at that level, but you're getting a good football player, and I wouldn't mind a guy. Authentic's here. Shout out,
There he
Salute brother.
is.
um, I love him. I love Royals. I think he's a football player that's going to rise. He did really well this week. I'm not surprised. He got hurt this year, which hurt his production, obviously, but I mean, I think you cannot watch his tape and come away anything but really impressed by what you're watching. When you watch him, you're watching a very good football player that should translate to the NFL. So I think Royals the guy. I don't know where he'll be. I think he'll be there on day 2. There's a chance he sneaks in earlier. Don't be surprised if he tests really well. He's so good. But I think that he'll probably be there day 2. If he's there when the Giants are picking, if they want to go wide receiver on day 2, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Just take the best player. So he's the guy to look for too.
Yeah, and before we go to tight ends, something I didn't get a chance to talk to you about, Sal, and we can decide if we want to do it and how we want to do it. But with this, people are throwing a lot of great names out to us and something. I was thinking maybe we got to figure out how to keep looking at this while we do some of our more fun off-season stuff. But maybe we can talk about trying to just take a couple guys of these each week. Just start off our episode. Just me and you talk about 1 or 2 guys each. Both maybe take
we'll
one
go
guys.
You're right. We'll go on for 4 hours at this pace doing this. I get it.
Yeah. But
No,
yeah.
we will. Well, we
Yeah.
should definitely speed through some of the other stuff, but I think it's worth mentioning these guys. I agree with you. We got to pick a couple of guys and go through them every week, right till we get to the draft. It's fun that way. We pick a couple of guys and really do deep dives into them in each position group, and we just kind of do like a quick 5 minutes on each of them and just keep going, right?
Yeah. So if you guys have anybody you want us to watch, is what I'm saying. Send it our way and we'll pick some because I think that would be a good way to get them. But yeah, let's go ahead and keep it moving.
Tight end. We have one name here. I think there are 3 standouts that we have to talk about from the Senior Bowl. So three guys who stood out this weekend. I'll put it that way. Elijah Arroyo was apparently the star of the show. The kid from Miami, did everything well, blocked well, received well. Really did everything. Was apparently like all over the film room. Players loved him, coaches loved him. Really did a good job to raise his stock. Made a strong case to be tight end 3 in this class. I mean, that's how good he was. So good for that kid. You're going to hear more about his name. The other 2 names worth mentioning, obviously, one of our guys that we mentioned in our top 5 in the beginning of the year, Mason Taylor from LSU, had a good week. Natural athlete, son of Jason Taylor. Just an outstanding football player at the tight end position. Does it all well, has dealt with some injuries over the years, but I think he's going to find himself right up there in like the tight end 4 discussion. And then a guy that our tight end 1, our tight end 1, you heard it here first, right? Our tight end 1 Don said it first. Don season. Yeah, Don was the guy who put me onto him. But our tight end 1 was Harold Fannin Jr. when we did our tight end episode. Authentic put in the chat. Harold Fannin is legit. And
yes,
his production numbers are through the freaking roof. When you watch him, he's not overly fast. He's not overly strong. He's not overly athletic. But he's just one of those guys who play after play produces. He gets it done. He blocks well. Not an elite blocker, but he's a good blocker. He's a really good route runner, good receiver, gets a ton of yak, which is what you want to see from a tight end. There are guys who don't look explosive on tape, who just win. And he's one of those guys, and he's really productive. So Harold Fannin Jr., like I have a feeling his stock's actually going down relative to some of these other guys.
Yeah.
Which in my mind is
good tight
great.
end class.
Yeah, I mean, not that I want us to take another damn tight end, but if we did, I would love to get Harold Fannin Jr.
He's a guy I would take.
Yeah.
He'd be great for. I mean, look, I'll take him, but imagine him in like Miami. He'd be a great fit there.
He would.
But I mean, yeah, he had the second best grade from the the grade out Senior Bowl game of anybody in that game. He had a really really good football game. So
Yep. All
shout
right.
out Hannah.
Yeah, I'll pull up his numbers real quick just so you guys. 3.76 yards per route run for a tight end. That's better than what Malik Neighbors did last year. That's bananas. 54.5% contested catch rate. Average after target was only 7.5 yards. It's a little low on the low side, but 7.5 yards after the catch. That's what you're looking for in a tight end. That's what you're looking for. Led the Senior Bowl in receptions. Thank you, Authentic. Like this guy's productive. Everywhere he goes, all he does is produce. And at some point, stop looking at like the traits and the speed.
Mm-hmm.
Baller's ball, right? Like
Yep.
some guys just get it done, and he's a guy that just gets it done. So I mean, Harold Fannin Jr. Get him on the Giants, man. I'm serious. I don't really want another tight end, but if we get another tight end, that's the one I want. That's the
Yeah.
guy I want. All right. Let's go on to the offensive tackles. So there were a couple of guys who stood out. Why don't you talk about the guy you listed here?
Yeah, I mean, Josh Connerly Jr. He was the big name that everyone kind of talked about who were there watching him. And it's funny because if you weren't there watching every single rep, you wouldn't have got that impression. Because I think a lot of us saw
Oh, just the one rep, the
yeah,
Mike Green rep.
Mike Green absolutely flattened him. And he didn't have the best game in the Senior Bowl itself, but from the sound of it, he recovered well from that Mike Green rep and was just consistent. One of the most consistent guys there, at least the most consistent tackle to play after play, rep after rep, where he really held his own and did well. As far as the Senior Bowl goes, he did have his issues. I mean, not really that much. He allowed 2 pressures, but one of them was a sack. So he did allow that in the Senior Bowl, but
I'll give you a
still,
guy. I'll give you another guy who I thought I went. I don't know if you got a chance to go back and watch all the drills because I went
mhm,
back and watched them, and those one-on-one drills are skewed. They definitely favor the defensive player because in a real game situation, these tackles and these guards they have help, right? Like you can't
yeah,
just run right past
yeah.
them. Um,
Somebody who was an offensive lineman,
so
that sucked.
some of the defensive stuff I see, I take with a grain of salt, right? I'm like, all right, like, are you going to really do that in a real game? But if I see an offensive lineman dominating, I
Yes,
pay attention. That's how I look at that. That's how I personally interpret those one-on-one reps. Like, I mean,
sure.
obviously, when you're looking at a great defensive player, but when you see an offensive lineman really like dominate again in these one-on-ones, I come away impressed. A guy that I saw consistently win rep after rep after rep was, and somebody just put in the chat, Anthony Belton, the tackle out of NC State. This is a kid who was not under the radar, but maybe a little bit under the radar coming in, had a great week at the Senior Bowl. He did not get beat in those reps. Like he was solid. And if you watch him, he has really good footwork, good balance, moves quickly. He has the length to cover the outside moves. He had the power to absorb the bull rushes. Like he did everything. I'm like, this guy looks like a really good tackle. His measurables, he's 6'6", 336 pounds. I don't have his arm length here. That does matter. I think he's around 34 inches or more. So he was in that threshold as a tackle. He's an NFL tackle. I don't know where he's going, but Belton was really good, and that's a guy to watch. Remember, the Giants are going to need to address the tackle position at some point. And you can't, like, 2 years in a row, AT, as great as he is, has missed substantial time with injuries. Evan Neal is not going to be a tackle for the Giants in the NFL. You have Jermaine Illuminor under contract for one more year. Hopefully they extend him. But you still need to bring in another person who's capable. I don't know how they do it, but I'm thinking like if a guy like Belton's there on day 2, I would take a swing. I would not hesitate to take a swing to get a guy like that in the room.
And he, PFF didn't grade him out that well, but as far at like in the game, but he didn't allow a single pressure. So whatever. I don't know how you grade
Yeah,
that poorly when you don't allow a single pressure.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know how they did that, but again, he's a guy that did well. I mean, there are other guys that are going to be there that we're not talking about from the Senior Bowl, but from the Senior Bowl players, he impressed me, not just from the game, but from the reps in practice. On the interior O line, there is one guy I wanted. Well, there's two guys we should talk about.
Yeah.
There's two guys. So there's the kid. We didn't mention him, but the kid from Boston College, I'm sorry, from North Carolina. I'm forgetting his name. The 5'10" kid. What was his name? Um, what's his name? Somebody remind me. The center from Boston, from North Carolina,
Lampkin.
Lampkin. That kid was kicking ass. Like, there's a rep of his. He's like 5'10", 270 playing center, and he goes up against 6'7" Dion Walker, who people before the season were saying this guy's a top 10 pick. You and I watched him, we're like, this guy's not good at all. Like, he's not. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't
Oh
see it.
my
And then
god.
he was just always standing up. His leverage was an issue. It's not just
Mhm.
his height; it's just the way he plays, and he has a long way to go to reach his potential, but he's not there yet. And Landon was just forklifting the dude. Like, it was embarrassing to watch. Um, so I think he's worth watching. But the guy the star of the show in the interior O line, sad to say, I highly doubt he'll be a Giant, was a guy that we both loved when we did our tackle review, Grey Zabel out of North Dakota State. He played center, he played guard. He really was the Graham Barton of this class. So
Yes.
I think he was your guy, wasn't he, Zabel? You brought him up. Talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I wasn't sure if he was using our tackle or if he made it into our interior line, but yeah, man,
I don't remember.
he was the one guy who didn't really seem to lose any reps. Everybody talked about him. He's played tackle his entire career. He got moved in, played center, played guard the entire week. Not one rep at tackle, and he dominated. He went up, was playing guys he's never played. He went to a competition level he's never played and killed it against one of the most talented defensive line groups we've ever seen come through the Senior Bowl. And I was hearing Nagy talk about it. He said like every single person was like in his top like 60 or something like that. Insane, like insane group they have there in the defensive line. These linemen were really, like pulled the shit out of the stick, but this guy was phenomenal. And looking at some of his numbers this year, makes sense. I mean, playing out at left tackle for North Dakota State, he had 4 hurries, 2 hits, 1 sack in the season. A 93.1 pass block grade this year. Played it all out at left tackle. Really, really good player. Somebody who I would definitely keep my eye on if early round 2. I would absolutely consider this guy if he's available in early round 2.
I'm hearing a lot of, I mean, Brugler was talking about it, and so was Jeremiah. I have a hard time seeing Zabel fall out of round 1 at this point.
Yeah,
They're just, I mean, players like him who can play all over the line, can be dominant at center or guard, and have a lot of experience playing tackle, who can play out there. They're worth their weight in gold. It's just hard to see good teams pass up on this guy. So there are a lot of teams whose rosters are built out, teams that are in the playoffs, drafting in the 20s. It's just hard to see every one of those guys looking at a guy like Grey Zabel and saying, nope, I don't want that guy. I mean, the Chiefs need a guy like him, A lot of teams do. The Commanders need a guy like him. A lot of teams that were there playing deep into the playoffs could always use a guy. Good teams just get good players like this. So I sadly don't see him getting to the Giants. But if he does, yeah, he's got to be in consideration for that pick. All right, let's go to defense. We're this is a fun group, man. Like,
really good.
the edge room showed out, really showed out, and the star of the show, everybody knows by now. Everybody knows that Abdul Carter is number 1 in the class as the edge rusher, arguably, the number 1 player in the class in terms of where he might get selected. However, I will make a case that Mike Green is nipping at his heels as an edge rusher. And similar thing. They're both a little undersized. People look at their size and their stature and say maybe they're not big enough. But Mike Green does not play small at all. Mike Green out of Marshall had a crazy productive year this year, Monty. I'm going to pull up his stats. But why don't you tell me? I'm going to pull up, if you don't mind, just telling everybody about him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. I'm pretty sure he led all the FPS and sacks this year. I think it's 17 and a half. He is a freak. He's the guy who actually put me onto him is our buddy Goon. Goon put me on.
He is the original real ass Goon of this year.
Yeah, no surprise that Goon would put us onto Mike Green, because he is a real ass Goon. Like that is Mike Green. You'll see him in Goon slides this year. I guarantee it. With his tweets. But it's funny because a lot of people questioned his size, as you mentioned. He actually measured up pretty good You
So
know,
what is he, 6'4"?
6'3",
6'3".
6'3", 251.
Yeah.
And, you know, so not bad. You know, 32-inch arms. That's not the best. Definitely a little shorter. You know, a guy he kind of reminds me of, I think I like him better, is a guy like Will McDonald, who came out and the Jets took him in the first round a few years.
He's so much stronger than Will McDonald was, though.
Yeah, he is. He shows so much more strength, but you know, there's athletes with a lot of production and stuff like that. I can see him being that, and a guy who raises up into the teens. And it's funny because
He was in Jeremiah's top 10.
yeah, was he? Wow.
I want to say either Jeremiah, somebody that I trust had him in their top 10, and I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, you're talking about a guy who looks like a potential elite pass rusher at the next level at the edge position. I mean, that's where they go.
And we know what the crazy thing about him, and then you're about to get into the numbers, but I'll just shout it out before you do it. Is obviously he played a lower level competition. That's
Yeah.
clear, but he had one of the best run stopping grades in the entire country, despite being a smaller edge. So, I don't expect that to be a strength of his in the NFL, but I don't think that's going to suddenly turn into a weakness for him.
Yeah. I mean, so listen to these numbers. I mean, granted, it's the PFF numbers, but when you see numbers like this, you have to pay attention, even against smaller competition. So you mentioned 17 sacks, 10 hits, 32 hurries, one batted ball, played a total of 719 snaps in 13 games, hit a 91.4 pass rush grade, 90.2 run defense grade, 90.9 true pass rush grade, 20.1% pass rush win rate, that's elite, and a 9.4% run stop rate, that's elite. There is not a single category in which he's not grading out as elite. Now, again, lesser competition playing at Marshall, sure, but you saw his pass rush repertoire at the Senior Bowl. You saw he has the bend, he has the speed around the edge, he has the spin move, the counters, he has the hand fighting techniques, and just a raw power to take on a guy like Connerly and just drive him into the ground. That is kind of the whole package. And I think teams are going to look at Mike Green and say, is there anything this guy cannot do as an edge? And they're going to probably come away with the conclusion like, no. So how high does he go? I would not be shocked if you saw Mike Green at the end of the day end up a top 10 pick. As good as the way he's trending.
Wow.
I mean, I'm just reading the tea leaves here a little bit, where I'm
Mhm.
hearing the guys I trust talk about how NFL scouts are talking about this guy and how impressed they were. He left early from the Senior Bowl, not just because he like killed poor Josh Connerly. He left because he heard what scouts were saying to him, and he said, "I'm done. I know where I'm going. I'm done." He's going to show up at the combine. He's going to probably test really well, and that'll be that.
Yeah, I mean, Brugler said he's an easy first round grade.
Yeah, I think he's climbing real fast. Like, this guy's surging. So he's the big star. But there are a lot of guys here that are going to be good, like that the Giants need to look at. So the
And
next
good
name on the
fits for
list,
us.
really good. As much as I love Mike Green, and you should always have room for guys like Mike Green on your team. The Giants already have two guys who are a little undersized playing speed edge, right? And what we
Mhm.
really need, as I keep saying it, we need monsters. We need hand in the dirt monsters. And there are some good guys here, man. So the next guy on the list is kid out of Texas A&M, Shemar Stewart. This is a hand in the dirt monster, right? 6'6", 290 pounds. He's only 21 years old. Not anywhere nearly as productive as a guy like Mike Green. In fact, he's only had like 4 sacks or something total in his entire college career. But man, does he have a lot of pressures. And he's a guy who wins with power. He has enough speed and agility to win on the outside, but he's your hand in the dirt, defensive end who's going to win with size, stop the run. He's got an 88.2 run defense grade. Has some work to do in this pass rush finishing. Like, he doesn't finish fully, but when you watch him, he drives linemen backwards. He collapses the pocket, like consistently collapses the pocket on tape, and he's great in the run, in run defense. I mean, I'll take a bet on that guy. I mean, to me, that he reminds me a lot of a guy like Trayvon Walker was, coming out of college.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I
similar,
see it.
similar size profile athlete. Trayvon Walker didn't have a ton of production. He didn't finish as much, but he had the run defense. He had the power. He would drive tackles back. I'm not. You're not. Nobody's taking Shemar Stewart number one overall, but you can get him, I think, in the middle of the first round or maybe even the second round. Maybe he falls. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean he's a guy that we talked about in our edge preview, and he's a guy who can play. You could play him as as an interior defensive line. You could play him just as like your defensive end in a 3-4. You could play him, 4-3 D end. I mean, I don't think he's gonna be a stand up, but he could be. Honestly, he could be. He could be a stand up guy.
He's athletic enough to do it.
Yeah. So I think you can do it in doses, and I think he'd be a really good fit for this team because I think at worst, he's going to be a good run defender in the NFL. And a guy who did not produce a lot of sacks. You are correct. 33 hurries this year. So he's still a guy who disrupts the quarterback.
Yep. Very much like the next guy. I'm going to start powering through these just in the interest of time because we did a lot of ranting already. A similar hand in the dirt type D end, Landon Jackson. This is another Don set. Don was telling me about this guy last year. Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas, 6'7", 280 pounds. He's a 22-year-old senior. Very productive in the run game. Again, 88.7 run defense grade, 9.2% run stop rate. Again, elite. A little bit better in the pass rush than Steward, but I mean, 11.5% pass rush win rate is not elite. It's good. It's okay. But he did have 7 sacks, 8 hits, 20 hurries. He has 3 batted balls. He uses his length. He has a lot of length, big long arms, knows how to use it to disrupt the passing lane. Another guy who collapses the pocket and gets pressures by winning with power. Doesn't win with a ton of speed, but he's just a good football player, man. He's a hand in the dirt football player that you add in, and he can play like Steward. He can line up kind of anywhere on the line for you.
And I'll say he's got good flexibility for guys. I mean, what is he, 6'7"? Like,
yep,
he's a really big guy. You're right. Wins with power. He has pretty good hands. One of the best run defending guys in the country. 88.7 run defense grade and 9.2 run stop rate. Those are both elite numbers. And that, this is what we need on our team. We need a guy who can provide something in the run game or in the pass game. And I think he can. I think he's a guy who could be like a 8 sack a season guy, which would be something I'd love. I'll take 8 sacks every year, every day of the week. But if he could pair up like 5 to 8 sacks while solidifying a run defense, that would be amazing. And that's the guy what I think Landon Jackson might be able to do in the NFL. So big fan of his. I don't think he's gonna go. He's not gonna go with our second round pick, but he might be there for a third.
Yep. If you want an edge rusher, you're not going to get I don't think we'll get Mike Green, but if you want that prototype, you want the Kirkland version of it, the next guy on the list is worth talking about is Donovan Ezeiruaku from Boston College, another slightly undersized player, 6'2", 247 pounds. He's a senior, 21 years old. Really productive. Had a good week at the Senior Bowl, Monty, but this guy, again, like his production numbers, and this is at Boston College, at an FBS school in the ACC, through the roof. Listen to these numbers. 14 sacks this year. 20 hits, 26 hurries. That is 60 pressures, 60 in 12 games. He had a 90.4 pass rush grade, 83.6 run defense grade, 90.6 true pass rush grade, 18.1% pass rush win rate. That's getting near elite, and a 10.1% run stop rate. That's the best one we've seen so far. So despite his size, Ezeiruaku, very good against the run, good against the pass. He's strong. You watch him. He's a strong pass rusher. Despite he's 6'2", 247, but man, he is well proportioned. He's a strong athlete. Not overly tall. He doesn't have the length you want necessarily, like some of these other guys do. But as a guy who's a little undersized in terms of height, but has that power to play the edge and still stop the run, he's a good player. He might be there. He might be there somewhere on day 2 for the Giants. So I mean, just keep an eye on him. I'm not. He does have long arms. That I've said it. I think that does help his game. He's just a little. His height is what affects his wingspan a little bit, and his ability to affect like the passing lanes, like Landon Tom. But he's a good football player, man. And I think somebody to watch, and he may test well. I think he will test well at the combine. Maybe a riser. We'll see. But a good football player.
Yeah. One thing I want to say before I'm about to jump to this next guy. Also, Landon Jackson, just looking at the numbers from the Senior Bowl game, 97.5 PFF grade and a 94.8. I didn't see anyone else even close to 90. It's pretty crazy, Quick game, only had a sack, but they graded him out really, really well. They thought he was dominant in a short time there. So he had a fantastic game. Next guy to talk about is Femi Oladejo. He's a UCLA edge. I saw some clips of him from there. He was dominating his one-on-ones and he was talking his shit. Yet they had him mic'd up and he was giving it to the offensive lineman. You love to see that kind of competitiveness in there. He's a very good player. He's another guy that added this group. And the other one, get through this is Barryn Sorrell. He's from Texas. He's another guy. Just imagine because I kind of saw him clipped up there. And he was wrecking havoc. He was making plays throughout all those practices, seemingly. So he definitely caught my eye. Somebody I want to go back and really watch. But he seemed to be causing havoc throughout the practices. I don't know if you have anything on either of those two.
No, I mean they're guys to watch because they're going to be day three guys. I think I think they're guys who I don't think they'll go on day two. There are guys we missed on day two. We're not going to go over everybody, but these are guys worth noting, and I think these are guys that like you hear like the talent evaluators, the scouts, and who they're talking about coming out of this. These are guys who are getting buzz coming out of the Senior Bowl. That's kind of what we're trying to focus on. They're not all the top guys, but they're interesting athletes to talk about. Um, just let's go to the interior defensive guys because I think there's some
Really
good
good guys
players here.
too.
I mean, this is a solid interior defensive line class. I mean, really, the guy who made a name for himself at the Senior Bowl, man, a guy who had a lot of buzz coming in. People wanted to see what he would do against better competition, and boy, did he show out. Darius Alexander out
Fan of
of uh,
his.
out of Toledo. I mean, really, really good player. Same school that our
Yeah.
guy Quinyon Mitchell went
Yeah,
to.
another Toledo guy.
Something about Toledo. Maybe we should pay attention to Toledo
Something in the
football because
water.
yeah, they're putting out some monsters out there. But t- Alexander, 6'4", 310-pound interior defensive lineman. He's a senior. Really productive season at Toledo. The dude had a 77.8 pass rush grade, 90.3 run defense grade, 12.8% pass rush win
We
rate,
need that.
which on the interior is pretty freaking awesome. That's elite, and a 79.3 true pass rate. On the interior, 7.9% run stop rate. The dude produced 4 sacks, 8 hits, and 25 hurries. That's 37 pressures and 3 batted balls from the interior. That is elite.
And he's got
Lines
long
up,
arms, so it makes sense.
long arms. He's a B gap. He's a lines up in the B gap. He's basically a 3 tech. Like this guy is kind of what the Giants need. They need a guy like this who would pair very nicely with Dexter Lawrence. He's about the same size as Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Similar profile. I think his stock will rise. I don't know where he's going to land, but I think
He
he
play all
definitely helped
over.
himself. Yeah, he can play kind of all over the line. I don't think he can really play the edge, but I think he can play anywhere in the interior. I think he can
Mm-hmm.
play nose. He can play three. He can play all the way up to about three, maybe even a
He,
4 eye.
he did
But
some edge this week. I don't think he'll do it
yeah,
much in the NFL, but he did a little bit.
yeah, he just wanted to show his versatility. He's a good
Yeah.
football player, and he helped
Um,
his stock. Now I don't know how high he will get, but it's hard for me to see a guy like him falling out of the second round. These guys usually go somewhere in the second round, but we'll see.
yeah.
But we're
People reached on the interior defensive line last year, so
then again, there's so many guys who are going to say I don't see them falling out of the second round. A lot of these guys are going to fall out of the second round.
mhm.
So,
And we'll
but
be right there to take him if we hold on to that third round pick. So please hold on to it.
please hold on. Obviously, we got to talk about Walter Nolen. I mean, by now, if you don't know who Walter Nolen is, you just don't watch college football. I mean, other than Mason Graham, he really is. He's the second best defensive lineman right now in college football. His stock is surging. He had a monstrous year at Ole Miss. If you don't know, he's 6'3", 305. He is a monster on the interior. He's a pass rushing demon. His tape is littered with just a variety of moves where he's either beating guys with spin moves on the inside and speed and quick release and explosiveness off the snap, or just flat out pancaking them, just driving them backwards and owning them with physicality. He's all muscle, all strength. He had a 75 pass rush grade, which doesn't sound great, but 10.9% pass rush win rate from lined up as a B gap 3 tech is pretty outstanding. And I would say that underestimates his value. He had an 80.8 true pass set pass rush grade and a 91.6 run defense grade with a nearly 12% run stop rate. That is elite. He
Insane.
produced 6 sacks, 4 hits, and 25 hurries, 35 pressures, and 2 batted balls from the interior for Ole Miss. His stock is surging, Monty. He had a good week. I think he's going top 15.
Yeah,
I'd
I
be
could see
I'd
it.
be I'd be
But
shocked if he falls below that,
but
honestly.
if he's there for us, run the card up because he would be perfect for what we need.
Yep. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's a great football player. I don't know if he'll fall, but I agree. He showed it this week. You saw the dominance that he can have. I think Darius Alexander was a little bit more of like the Grey Zabel this week, just Mr. Consistent. But Walter Nolen, he had that upside. You saw like what this guy can be this week. And I know you're a big fan, and I am too. But you were on him earlier. Talk about our last guy we have here.
All right. So the last guy, I appreciate you letting me introduce him. This was one of my guys. Was Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. This is the guy who I mentioned. Just keep an eye on this guy. When we did our DT episode very early in the year, I said this guy has insane production out of Duke, coming out of Duke, transferred to Virginia Tech. Slightly undersized. He comes in at about 6'1". I think he's just under 6'1", 290. He's a graduate, so he's a little older. He's 23 years old. But if you watch Aeneas Peebles, it is impossible to not come away impressed by what you're watching. This guy is nasty. Just nasty on the inside. He's a good run defender. He's not a bad run defender. He's solid. He had a 78.5 run defense grade, 6.3% run stop rate. It's good to above average.
Yeah.
But where he excels is in the pass rush.
Holy
Listen to
shit.
these numbers. 91.2 pass rush grade, 91.3 true pass rush grade, 17.7% pass rush win rate from the freaking 3-tech position, dude.
That's elite for an edge. That's elite for an edge.
Listen, 3 sacks, 3 hits, 31 hurries. 31 hurries and 2 batted balls. So that height's not bothering him. When you watch his tape, you're going to see 2 things from him. One, he's got the full package of pass rush repertoire. He does everything. He's strong as shit for his size. He uses leverage. He's like the low man wins. But when he gets his shoulder into these guards, and Authentic knows this because we talked about this, he has the nastiest spin move you will ever see from an interior lineman in college. He does this over and over again. He knows what he's doing. He sets up guards. He drives them back with the one shoulder, gets them positioned, and then he just spins like the fucking Tasmanian devil. He spins away from them, and he's turning his body, and the next thing you know, he turns right into the quarterback and takes him down. The guy is fast as shit. He's athletic. He's strong. He's got the whole package, man. So people are going to be down on him because of his measurables. Somebody's going to take this dude and he's going to cause problems in the NFL. Aeneas Peebles is a dude. This guy is a monster.
Get me Peebles and get me Landon Jackson. Get a run handle. Get us some pass rush in the interior.
He plays a lot bigger than his height would suggest. 6'1", 290. This guy is a monster. Get him in here. I love interior D linemen like this because they don't even need help to pass rush. This guy does it on his own. He does it on his own. He's awesome. Yeah, he makes stepping up in the pocket a nightmare. I agree, Authentic, because of those moves, right? He drives. First of all, he wins with power. He pushes the line backwards. But when he turns that spin move and does those secondary moves, the quarterback has nowhere to go. The pocket collapses, and even when the quarterback thinks he has room, like you see linemen trying to move people to the side, create a little bit of a pocket. The dude spins into the open spot. It's ridiculous. So I love Peebles. I don't know where he's getting drafted. I don't have a good gauge for this right now. I know people talk about him like a day 3 guy. If I don't know how he's a day 3 guy, he's too freaking good. But get him on the Giants. I don't care how. Just get this man on the Giants. He's awesome. So I would love it. That's the last interior D line we're going to go over. There's a ton of guys. This class is huge. We're going to need like multiple D line episodes, but just those 3 guys for this. Linebackers. You want to go through these guys real quick?
Sure. So the first one is Jeffery Bassa from Oregon. This guy's actually a former safety. And I think what really impressed this week for people is just seeing his movement skills because, as a former safety, he was really just running around there and really good in space. He wasn't incredibly productive this year, but he got this is the type of event. He got injured this year, so that was part of it. But this type of event that's built for him. He's just a natural guy. Looks really fluid out there, and just plays with his he's one of the guys who plays with his hair on fire. He's a guy that we'll have to keep an eye on and see how he tests and things like that. But those safety to linebacker converts are always interesting.
Yeah. The other guy worth mentioning is the guy we went over last year. We thought he was going to declare last year from Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
Smael Mondon. This guy's a tank. He's
Yeah.
6'3", 235. You don't see a lot of 6'3", 235 behemoths play linebacker anymore, coming out of college. They're usually a lot smaller than that. But this guy's built like a freaking, just a tank. I knew he would look good at the Senior Bowl. Not highly productive at Georgia. Sometimes that's misleading in Georgia, the way they rotate players,
Mm-hmm.
But he showed out. He did a good job. He kind of does everything. He can do everything you want in a linebacker. He does a little bit of coverage in the slot. He does mainly. He's just a kind of a guy who lines up in the box and takes away the run game, and he's pretty good at it. Um, I don't think he's like a versatile guy who's gonna like run out in coverage and chase tight ends around, but as a solid run stopper, I think he's a guy that you'll have to watch. He's probably a day three guy. I'm almost certain that he's a day three guy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not an amazing class of linebackers, but there's some guys here, and I don't know who our coaches are gonna be next year, but at some point you need to get in more guys here who can just stop the run, right? You need
Yeah.
guys who can come in, come downhill, and crush the running back. So he's somebody to watch.
And I'll say Brugler said he was the loudest voice on the field. So, that's something for, being your quarterback or your defense. And for the American squad, he was the best graded out guy. Had no missed tackles or anything like that. He was a very consistent player throughout the Senior Bowl game. So,
All right. Cornerbacks. There are a few guys to go over here. And so we're still doing Senior Bowl. So I think the first guy was Quincy Riley.
mm-hmm.
And this is the kid from Louisville, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he had a good week. Now he's got good measurables. He's about 6 feet tall, 195. Had a really good week, solid in coverage. I've watched some tape of him. He was sticking with guys. He was
Yes, he
sticky in
was.
phase. He was able to run with them. He had good ball skills. He was able to not let guys, get too far past him. So he turned with them, ran with them, and was able to turn around. Had good instincts in turning and getting the ball. Like at least that's hard to do in the Senior Bowl when cornerbacks show that. You got to pay attention. Didn't have a great season this year. I have to look into why. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
gave up a decent gave up 3 touchdowns, only had 2 picks, and had a lot of catches against him. But last year he was really good. Like I looked at
I
it.
thought he was better the year before.
Yeah, he was really good the year before. I mean, he had 3 picks and only allowed 1 touchdown, and he only allowed 23 receptions on 63 targets last year. So, something changed this year. I'm not really sure why, but he looked good in the Senior Bowl. Maybe he's one of these guys who I have to see if he had injuries or something. I really don't know, but he had a good Senior Bowl, and again, according to Brugler, a guy that was rising in the eyes of scouts, and he has the measurables. So that's Quincy Riley out of
He's
Louisville.
he's a really fast guy, really athletic. So yeah, that's a guy to keep an eye on. Another guy, I actually wasn't on a list, but I'll mention real quick here. Was Darian Porter. Darian Porter from Iowa State. He's the guy who I saw like listed on all, like they would always post the like the jumbotrons of the guys who had like the fastest mile per hour and stuff like that. Darian Porter was on a lot of those. That's a guy who had a really good year this year at Iowa State. He's a guy that you'll see on a lot of these big boards. He's more of a zone corner. Not that great in run defense though, but a guy who plays really well there. 91 zone coverage grade this year. So definitely a guy to watch, but very athletic. And his athleticism would tell you that he could probably play more man. 6'4", 200 pounds. He's definitely has the size.
Um, I don't know much about the next guy, Upton Stout. I'm gonna have to go look into him, but he was a guy that the guy like Brugler and Jeremiah mentioned as being
Mm-hmm.
somebody to look after. I'm gonna have to dig into him. But the last guy that I do think is worth mentioning, a guy a lot of people know about by now, is Azareye'h Thomas out of
Mm-hmm.
Florida State. I mean, he's rising. He's got borderline first round vibes at this point. You're hearing good stuff about him. He's a big kid, 6'2", 198, cornerback from Florida State. They've been producing some solid corners the last couple of years, and he's just another one of them. Physical, strong. He takes away receivers because of his size. He only got targeted 33 times this year, and he gave up only 17 receptions, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Only gave up 141 yards in 12 games. So that's crazy for a cornerback
Mm-hmm.
with a 50.2 passer rating allowed. That's impressive.
There you
So
go.
he made a name for himself. He plays well in man and zone. He's a big, strong kid. Basically a good outside corner. We could use that. So Azareye'h Thomas is definitely somebody that should be on the Giants' radar.
Yeah,
Um,
and to Stout, I need to go back and look at him more too, but worth mentioning, he's a tiny guy, 5'8", but he was a guy who was apparently really sticky this week and was just all over people. So, I imagine that's gonna be more of a nickel guy, but he stood out apparently.
yep. We just did our safety episodes, but I guess they go over a couple of guys here. They actually have Upton Stout listed as a safety. Like I think he was
Mhm.
a converted safety, if I'm not mistaken. So that's interesting because he's playing linebacker now.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, he's playing cornerback.
Yeah,
But they list him as a safety. I think he translates more to safety at that size, but whatever.
yeah.
But one of the guys we're going over, we just went over Sebastien Castro. He had a decent week. He's one of these guys that we weren't surprised would have a good week at the Senior Bowl. Very impressive kind of individual, well coached at Iowa. For those who missed it, he's more of a nickel, um, but he's a nickel safety, all around good football player. Nothing elite about him, but tackles well, technically sound, does everything right, solid. Um, the other
Mhm.
guy was Dante Trader. Did you get a chance to watch him at all?
I saw a little bit of his reps at the Senior Bowl, and but I didn't go back and watch his tape or anything. But
So
he seemed consistent.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure Authentic, who was the official. I don't know if he's official. You got to film Maryland this year, so I know you probably got to see Dante Trader play. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on him because he apparently impressed people this week. So he's 5'11", 202. He is a senior. Looking at his production numbers, they look pretty solid. 49 tackles, 10 assisted, only missed 3 tackles, and he lined up deep 209 times, box 281 times, slot 72. So he had a little versatility. It looks like they used him mainly as a box safety, but um, you know, a guy I'm gonna have to look into the film on. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna be looking at safety again this year, but we might, depending on what happens with Jason Pinnock. But he's another guy who's probably going day 3, and that is worth paying attention to. The Giants did spend time at Maryland looking at players, so it's worth noting some of these guys from there. Um, that's the Senior Bowl. Where are we at? An hour 52. Do you want to power through this? Or
Yeah, we'll just run through. We can just run through the quick names real quick. We don't have to go as much detail as we did for the Senior Bowl. So we want to just kind of call them out. Some guys that shined at the Shrine Bowl.
yep. All right.
Um, yeah, I can. How about I just go through them? You can, and we can talk about if we
Yeah.
want to make any of them. I'll just
Yeah.
kind of go through them because I have a little bit of each person. So quarterback, we had Kyle McCord. Running back, we had Taj Brooks. Wide receiver, we had Dante Thornton, Ricky White, and Antoine Wells. Tight end, we had Luke Lachey. Offensive tackle, we had Gareth Warren. Interior offensive line, we had Bryce Cabelladou. Edge, we had Antoine Powell Ryland. Interior defensive line, we had Jordan Phillips, another
Another
Maryland
Maryland
guy.
kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Linebacker, we had Chandler Martin, Teddy Buchanan. Cornerback, we had Kobe Bryant and Elijah Huzzy.
Yep.
And that's all we had.
All right. So a couple of guys I want to talk about there. We already discussed Kyle McCord, is kind of a day
Mm-hmm.
2, day 3 quarterback, really solid all around, but just
He had a
not
good
doesn't.
showing, though.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that's well trained and has a lot of experience in good pocket passer. He can spin it. Not a lot else there, but I think productive, and he'll be a good backup in the NFL. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure about that. The guy that's we're talking about here is Taj Brooks right away.
We
So
loved him last year before he went back.
yeah, Taj Brooks is a beast, and it's shocking. Like I don't even know what rank he is in this running back room because they're so deep in this class. I mean, he might be like running back 12 or something, or 15 or something crazy. But Taj Brooks is a tank. He's 5'10", 230. He's a kid out of Texas Tech. He was a monster last year. He's a monster this year. Last year ran for 1,547 yards on 292 carries. He had another 287 carries this year and had another 1,512 yards. He had 10 touchdowns last year, 17 touchdowns this year. Both years he was going 5.3 yards per attempt. he also has some receiving chops. He had 28 receptions both of the last 2 years and 34 targets both of the last 2 years. This year, though, he got more yardage. Last year, he only had 70 yards in the air. This year, 199. Um, he's a really good running back that hits the gap. Like he's a guy that like he sees his hole like begin to form, and he just powers through it. And he is a tank of a human being. I love this kid. Like I think he's a really good running back. I mean, there's some Audric Estime to this guy, the way he plays.
Mhm.
And I like guys like that. You need guys like that. He's going to be there, I think, on day 3, man. And I would be on the lookout for a guy like Taj Brooks. He would complement what the Giants are doing very nicely, I think.
I would love him because, especially while we're trying to develop this offensive line, we need guys who can just kind of get north and south. And that was something that was nice that Tracy brought to this team. But he doesn't have the power to really just kind of like drive that Taj Brooks has. Taj Brooks is he's a pinball, a bowling ball, whatever ball you need to be, he can be. He just bounces around and runs people over. I want to mention, this year, good advanced metrics as far as this kind of stuff I like, with 58 missed forced tackles, 31st in the country, 3 yards after contact per attempt. Both are really good. But if you just go back a year where we kind of like fell in love with this guy, he led the country. 96 missed tackles forced in 2023 and 3.42 yards after contact per attempt. This guy was absolutely dominant. I know the stats ended up being it's pretty much the same, but as far as being a tackle breaker in 2023, there was nobody better in all of college football. It's basically, if you compare it to this year, it's kind of like what like Cam Scadaboo has been doing as far as like tackles.
The only negative I have about him is that he's a little older. He'll be 23, I believe, at the time of the draft, close to 23. He's been there for years. He's a redshirt senior. He has a lot of mileage as a running back in college. In the last 3 years, he has let me see. I'll do the math here real quick. 579, 679, 686, 726 carries in 3 years in college. That's a lot of mileage. And the way they use him, it's bruising. It's Blake Corum like, right? And that's an issue. So he's a dude that like it's it's not likely that he's gonna have a very long career in the NFL at the age he's coming out. But I think for a rookie contract, he's fine, and it's going to hurt his stock. Is the mileage he's got, the tread on his tires. You saw some of his production numbers, like his yards after contact, go down a little bit this year. You wonder if that's a little bit of wear and tear because they really used him a lot last year, and then they used him a lot this year. So teams are going to be wary of that. And sometimes these guys, they don't have the immediate impact in the NFL because they're just kind of beat up a little bit by the time they come in, and their second year they're a lot better, right? So that's just something to be aware of. It's a guy like Taj Brooks. I love the way he plays, but Texas Tech used him for like constantly. So just something to be aware of. It'll be hedged into the price though. Like he's gonna go day 3 most likely, and I think that comes that hedges that price into it. But I love the way he plays football. So he's the guy that I love from this group. Couple other guys, man. Of the receivers, Ricky White is a guy I've been talking about for a long time. This guy is awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
Ricky White he's not the biggest dude. He's kind of a skinny guy, but man, he can route people up, and he's super productive in college. I mean, Ricky White,
and he did it in these practices.
yep, he was routing guys up left and right, and he
Mhm.
was again super productive, and in the practices, he was there. He didn't have any problem killing guys during the Senior Bowl. During the Shrine Bowl. Plays at UNLV. I'm trying to pull up his numbers, but if you haven't watched him, great route runner, tempos his routes really well, good hands catcher, competitive at the catch point, 2.93 yards per route run, 82 receiving grade. He is about, I want to say he's like 6'1", 190, and he's a slender 6'1", 190. If that makes
But
sense.
despite being slender, he's a guy who can do stuff after the catch. I mean, he had 23
Yes.
missed tackles forced this year. That's tied for 13th in the country. This guy's a guy who can separate and then make a play after he gets the ball. I mean, 2.93 yards per route run that is elite numbers.
Yep. Yep, it's really good. And you know, and he's got some versatility. He's played mostly on the outside, 243 snaps on the outside this year, 128 in the slot, but he can be moved around. You know, kind of like a poor man's Malik neighbors in terms of prototype. You know, guys you can like the Z type receivers, right? They're not really slots, they're not really outside. You can move them around, but he has flexibility. He's a good football player, you know. Is he exactly what the Giants need? I think, you know, again, if he's there on day three, another guy that you got to pay attention to because he's going to be a productive NFL player. I'm pretty confident he has all the
Yeah.
metrics and he has the tape to match it, and vice versa, that suggests this guy's going to be a productive NFL player. Like you shouldn't sleep on these guys, you know. Um, so he's a guy I really liked. Who else are we talking about here?
One guy I just want to mention real quick is Juice Wells, Antoine Wells. You know, he's the guy who hasn't been productive since he's transferred to Ole Miss. He was a guy that really expected to be the guy. He was really good at South Carolina. I believe he's a former 5-star. I could be wrong about that. Don't take that to be like definitely wrong, but I know he was very highly sought when it's Ole Miss. But he hasn't been the guy they expected him to be. But he had a fantastic practice. Everyone's raving about him. So you know, worth keeping an eye on because he definitely has some pedigree.
Yep. I'm going to skip a few of these guys. I mean, I'll mention like some of these guys, like Luke Lachey is a guy, Iowa tight end. He could have come out last
Watch
year,
your
got hurt.
Iowas.
Iowa tight, and he's just like you watch him at the Shrine Bowl. He's good at everything, dude.
Mm-hmm.
He can block tackles. He can run routes. He can get yak.
Yep,
Yeah,
agreed.
and
I
which
totally
is
agree.
which is key, right? Tight ends who get you need tight ends who get yak. I was out of my misery. I was watching. I was just so unhappy with the news that was breaking today that I was watching. You know, highlights of the 2007 Super Bowl, that final that the fourth quarter, and I don't know if you remember the play, but Kevin Boss had that big patch when it was a 7-3 game early in the fourth, and Eli hit Kevin Boss on a seam route over the middle. He took it for like 45 yards. And there's nothing special about Kevin Boss, but he's a good football player. But that's kind of what you want out of your tight ends, right?
Mm,
You want them to block, run some simple routes that are useful and like quarter available to your quarterbacks to present a big target. And once they get the ball, you want them to bounce off some guys and just keep going, right? You want them to use their frame to get yak. That's important. Um, that makes a good tight end and a productive one. And I think Lachey has that. Um, and he's a guy that injury has hurt, but he's going to be a good football player. You can bank on him being a good football player in the NFL. Um, let's see. Um, let's get to the defense because I think
yeah,
some of these
there's a
guys are
guy
worth
standing
talking
out to
about.
me there.
Yeah, there's one guy. I don't know if you want to go into him right away, but go right ahead.
The one guy I really want to jump into is Jordan Phillips from
Yep.
Maryland. That was he was the guy who really shined this week. That was the guy everybody said who watched him said he was unblockable when
Hmm.
he was there. He hit this like dirty spin move this week that went pretty viral. But no, he's a guy who can play low, which we love to have, and he's a guy who can take on double teams. He's got a strong bull rush, and at the end of the day, he's a guy who plays low, maintains on the line of scrimmage, and can disengage and make plays in the run game. Something we really liked about a guy like Chris Jenkins. I think that's something that kind of like Jordan Phillips can be in this class.
He has a little bit more pass rush chops than Chris Jenkins did coming out.
Agreed.
He's got a little bit more juice. Chris Jenkins was a guy that we loved his athleticism and his leverage and his strength in the run game. And we're like, as a run stopper and a strong athlete on the interior, his floor is like a 10-year run stopping defensive lineman starter,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's gonna be like Cincinnati has him there eventually. I think he's gonna end up starting if they let BJ Hill go. Um, and they'll just plug him in and he'll be a run stopper for them. And if he ever develops a pass rush repertoire, great. But at minimum, he's a run stopper on the interior. I think that's what you're getting with Jordan Phillips, but definitely has more juice in the pass rush game. There were reps where he was doing some pretty spectacular stuff in terms of like chop moves and like he was just ripping his arm and using hand fighting and just like quickness to get to the quarterback. I was impressed by what I saw from Jordan Phillips. Now again, I have to go back and watch him in more game situations, but he turned a lot of heads. He had a 10.5% pass rush win rate from the interior. That's really, really good. Um, and his overall grades are solid. Like there's no weakness in his game that I see, at least from the advanced metrics. I got to go back and watch this film. I admittedly have only watched bits and pieces of it, but really had a good week. And I think this is a guy who coming into this was looked at as sort of like a borderline day two pick. And I think he solidified himself as a day two pick. Um, after this. So he's probably going to be somewhere. I'm going to guess third round is my best guess for Jordan Phillips.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
see, but I can see it.
we'll see. Yep. The other guy that's worth talking about is the edge rusher, Antoine Powell Ryland. Did you watch him at all?
No, not really.
Yeah, I mean he had a good week. I mean, this is the kid who plays next to our other guy. You know, he is at Tech, and he had a good week. He's a productive player. I'm going to pull up his stats in a second. I'm looking for him. He plays at Virginia Tech, 6'3", 252. He's be 23 at the time of the draft. Really good pass rusher, dude. 16.8% pass rush win rate, 82.9 true pass rush grade, 85.1 pass rush grade, productive. 14 sacks, 9 hits, 25 hurries this year, and 596 snaps. He had 10 sacks last year as well. Really good, solid, productive player. He lines up primarily outside the tackle. He's really an edge rusher, but he's a good football player. And he's not a liability in run defense. I mean, I don't think he's great in run defense, but he's not a total liability. So to me, mostly he's a situational pass rusher and an extra edge, but like he's like an edge three type to me. But
Hmm.
these guys have value. You need these guys. So I think he made himself some money, and he'll get drafted high enough where some team will look at him as an early day three kind of pick. Maybe late two, but probably more like early day three to be added to the edge room of a lot of teams. So he's worth talking about. The Giants are going to have to address the edge position in some way, shape, or form. I rather have monsters, but we'll see how they do it.
Yeah.
And then let's go through cornerbacks real quick.
Hmm.
One guy we got to talk about, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. After the late Kobe Bryant. No, but he's impressive, man. He's a guy who impressed a lot of people during the Senior Bowl. He's a small dude. All right, this
He,
guy's like 171. I think he came in at. He's a thin dude, but he's a guy who plays with a ton of fire. He's an aggressive guy who's gonna come after you. He apparently got a lot of flags thrown out at him this week, but he's a guy who's had a couple years of really good production over at Kansas. I know he had his struggles this year, and he was a little bit better last year, but Kobe Bryant is a really solid player. A guy who had a really good run defense grade despite being a really skinny guy. 91.3 in the run defense this year. He's a guy to keep on. I think a lot of that comes with kind of the fire he plays with.
yep. No, I agree. He's chirpy, man. You watch
Mm-hmm.
him. This guy's yapping the whole
Yeah,
time. He's a
yeah.
he's a shit talk, he's
You
a shit talker.
you want that,
He's
man?
yeah, he's got that. He's got that shit talking like thing. He plays a lot bigger than his size. I love the way he plays football. I love his attitude. You want that, like you said. I think the last few years I've been burned believing in these skinny frame
Yeah,
corners, and I'm
Emmanuel
not.
Forbes.
I can't, dude. I can't
Mm-hmm.
get. I just can't because like these guys look great in college and they get to the NFL and then they look small in college. They get to the NFL, they look minuscule,
But
and
I believed in Nate Wiggins, and it worked out for me. So I'm in on Kobe Bryant.
they're not all the same. So
Mm-hmm.
he's a good player. I'm gonna take kind of a wait and see approach with Kobe Bryant
Yeah, I
because
hear you.
he's pretty tiny, but I like the way he plays football. But I mean, I'm curious where he goes. Um, anyway, that's kind of it. It's a long episode.
Yeah.
It's like our old school 2 hour episodes here. Went through a lot of stuff between Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl. We didn't do the previews for you guys this year because they were like our least watched episodes last year, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
shit ton of work to go through every single player. And this Senior Bowl, we're like, screw that. Let's just wait for the games and the weeks to go down, and then like analyze these guys a little bit afterwards. So what we're gonna do from now on, now that we've done all our reviews and done all of these exhibition game reviews, is we're gonna start preparing for the draft in a more concerted way. We probably need to have a mock draft coming up at some point.
Yeah, maybe next
So
week.
yeah, maybe we'll do our first mock next week and we'll figure out how to do it. After that, I
Post
think I
Super Bowl
like
mock.
post Super Bowl mock. And after that, I think Monty, we're gonna have to start talking about things like how we fix this team. That was
Mm-hmm.
an episode I think we like doing how to fix this effing team already, and just overall off season plans, how we'd like to see it done. And then we
Brady
are
three.
gonna Yeah, and we're gonna have to go through like these position groups again, one by one, maybe two players at a position per week or something like that.
Mhm.
Per position, and just get through as many of these guys as possible, building up to making our big board of top
Yeah.
100 players. But we got a lot coming up for you guys. It's gonna be a little bit more focused now. So we appreciate all of you guys who've been here the whole way with us. It was a fun episode. It started with my rant about the state of the Giants, the Eli Manning thing, and I know there are Giant fans who even are disparaging of Eli. I'm going to close this out with that again. Um, I'm kind of done with being a Giants fan constantly waiting for the next shitty shoe to drop. There was a time when this man was our quarterback where we had some greatness, and I want it back. I'm not arguing with Giant fans anymore. This is our low point. I'm going to show you everybody my thing again for those who missed it. I keep this in my basement, and it's my pride and joy right here. Um, I want that again, right? So I want that moment again. I want the Giants to give us a reason to believe in that kind of stuff again. I'm all in on this team again. I want them to fix it. It gets fixed now. So hopefully this offseason, whatever happened until now, is the beginning of something much better. And I hope we're at our low point. So we will see you guys soon. Remember, follow us at He's a Giant Pod. Follow me at Queens_guy. Follow Monty at MonteCri5TO. Send us messages. We appreciate all of your input. We'll keep you guys posted on what we're doing. Appreciate all of you guys, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Go three-peat.
Yeah.
Go
Go
three-peat.
Chiefs, man.
Go Taylor Swift. We'll see you guys on the other end. Have a great weekend, guys. See you next time. Go Giants.
Go Chiefs.